Bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Yeah. Don't worry. Don't panic. Phone the neighbors. Wake the kids. It's Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Today's Tuesday, October 11th. 285 days into the new year. 81 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California, and I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I'm your so humble host, Jimmy Church. What's cracking, everybody? How you doing? Tonight, very special guest, Stephen Mehler is here. Egypt 2.0, continuing our amazing Egypt week. Tomorrow night, William Henry joins us. And of course, Thursday night is another Fader night with John Rappaport and his No More Fake Newsroom, followed by Open Lines. You know the drill. All right. Yes. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Yeah, I'm watching the dancing GIFs right now. And let me get a couple of retweets in. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. I was just tweeting right up till the end of everything there. That was the delay. And just posted some amazing, one, there's more pictures from Saturn from Cassini. Oh, my goodness gracious. When I was a kid, my dad had a telescope, and when I was a kid, I was like 10, and we would sit out and check things out. It was just a, normal telescope. I don't know, maybe 6 inches round and 3 feet long. Nothing, too crazy or complicated, but it was fun. But one of the things that I used to really enjoy looking at was Saturn, because it wasn't like the moon. And the moon was cool. I used to check that out a lot. And Mars was cool, and Jupiter. But Saturn, you could see the rings, right? Okay. And you look at this new Cassini photograph that NASA published today. And those aren't the rings that I remember when I was a kid. That's a whole nother definition of ring. Unbelievable. So anyway, check out check out the pictures right now. You can go to our Facebook page over at Jimmy Church Radio and check it out. So there you go. And let's move on here really quick. Check out all of our sponsors. Life Change Tea. We just got in the chocolate colostrum. Yeah, we did. Got it today. Did my first dose, and it is indeed chocolate, and it is indeed colostrum, all organic. It is now available over on the website, and just go to lifechangetea.getthetea.com. Mention Jimmy when you order, either online or over the phone, and you will get yourself free shipping. Also, the Fade or Not special from Studio Dome, hard shell case packed with a portable stereo Bluetooth system. Their TWS True Wireless Stereo technology. It is stereo, it is Bluetooth, it is wireless, all in a hard shell case for just $129. Use the promo code JCRTWS when you order. Get 60% off the normal price of $399. And of course, even on that, with $129 all in, you still get free shipping. That's promo code JCRTWS. The banners are over at jimmychurchradio.com. Let's get this show cracking. Happy birthday to today. Daryl Hall is 70. Holy crap. I almost don't buy it. Daryl Hall is 70. Love his show, by the way. Live at Daryl's house. And he don't look or act 70. He just doesn't. 70 years old. Unbelievable. Daryl Hall, happy birthday. Also today, one of my favorites, seriously, Joan Cusack. Today is 54. Amazing. Two movies come to mind, and she's been in so many, but Grosse Point Blank, which right there, you can kind of stop things right there. Grosse Point Blank and My Blue Heaven. And what's weird about both of those movies? I think they got their cult following that they deserve, but that's today. But when they were released, they just didn't hit with everybody. And I got to tell you, both movies, Grosse Point Blank and My Blue Heaven, are two of my favorite comedies of all time. They're up there. I would say if I put a top 10 together, those two would be right there. Man. Anyway, Joan Cusack, today, 54. Let's see, where are we at? 1986, on this day in history. Reagan and Gorbachev meet in Reykjavik in Iceland. And what's significant about that? Because that was the revealing of the SDI, or Star Wars project. Good times. Fader fact. Domino's Pizza. Is this thing on? Domino's sold as many pizzas during O.J. Simpson's car chase as it did on Super Bowl Sunday. And that is a vetted Fader fact. You're going to go and you're going to repeat that to somebody, and they're going to go, dude, no. But it's a Fader fact. Tonight, Stephen Mehler is with us. Egypt 2.0. Last night was 1.0. And tomorrow night, William Henry is going to be here. Our amazing Egypt week continues tonight with Stephen Mehler. And it's going to be great. And don't forget that Thursday is Fader night. All right. One of my earliest memories is sitting on my grandfather's shoulders, waving a flag as our astronauts returned to Hawaii. This was years before we had set foot on the moon, decades before we'd land a rover on Mars, a generation before photos from the International Space Station would show up in our social media feeds. I still have the same sense of wonder about our space program that I did as a child. It represents an essential part of our character, curiosity and exploration, innovation and ingenuity, pushing the boundaries of what's possible and doing it before anybody else. The space race we won not only contributed immeasurably important technological and medical advances, but it also inspired a new generation of scientists and engineers with the right stuff to keep America on the cutting edge. And that's one of the reasons why, in my first address as president to the American people, I vowed to return science to its rightful place. In our first few months, my administration made the largest single investment in basic research in our history. And I went to the Kennedy Space Center to call for reimagining and reinvigorating our space program to explore more of our solar system and look deeper into the universe than ever. In the years since, we've revitalized technology innovation at NASA, extended the life of the International Space Station, and helped American companies create private sector jobs by capitalizing on the untapped potential of the space industry. Last year alone, NASA discovered flowing water on Mars and evidence of ice on one of Jupiter's moons. And we mapped Pluto. More than 3 billion miles away, we mapped in high resolution. Our space telescopes revealed additional Earth-like planets orbiting distant stars. And we're pursuing new missions to interact with asteroids. And that will help us learn. It will help us learn how to protect not only the Earth from the threat of colliding with one, while also teaching us about the origins of life on Earth. We've flown by every planet in the solar system, something no other nation can say. And we continue to drive down the cost of space exploration for taxpayers. This week, we'll convene some of America's leading scientists, engineers, innovators, and students in Pittsburgh to dream up ways to build our progress and find the next frontiers. Just 5 years ago, U.S. companies were shut out of the global commercial launch market. Today, thanks to groundwork laid by the men and women of NASA, they own more than a third of it. More than 1,000 companies across nearly all 50 states are working on private space initiatives. We have set a clear goal vital to the next chapter of America's story in space: sending humans to Mars by the 2030s. And then, of course, returning them safely to Earth, with the ultimate ambition to one day remain there for an extended time. Getting to Mars will require continued cooperation between government and private innovators. And we're already well on our way. Within the next 2 years, private companies will, for the first time, send astronauts to the International Space Station. The next step is to reach beyond the bounds of Earth's orbit. I'm excited to announce that we are working with our commercial partners to build new habitats that can sustain and transport astronauts on long-duration missions in deep space. These missions will teach us how humans can live far from Earth, something we'll need for the long journey to Mars. The reporter who covered the moon landing for the New York Times, John Noble Wilford, later wrote that Mars tugs at our imagination with a force mightier than gravity. Getting there will take a giant leap, but the first small steps happen with our students. The Mars generation. They walk into their classrooms each day. Scientific discovery doesn't happen with the flip of a switch. It takes years of testing, patience, and a national commitment to education. President Eisenhower knew this. In 1958, he devoted great resources to science and math. And around the same time, he created NASA. And it's why I am proud that we've passed important milestones in STEM education. For the first time, more than 100,000 engineers are graduating from American schools every year, and we're on track to accomplish my goal of training 100,000 excellent new STEM teachers in a decade. When our Apollo astronauts looked back from space, they realized that while their mission was to explore the moon, they had in fact discovered the Earth. If we make our leadership in space even stronger in this century than it was in the last, we won't just benefit from related advances in energy and medicine and agriculture and artificial intelligence. We'll benefit from a better understanding of our environment and ourselves. Someday, I hope to hoist my own grandchildren onto my shoulders. We'll still look to the stars and wonder as humans have since the beginning of time. But instead of eagerly awaiting the return of our intrepid explorers, we'll know that because of the choices we make now, they've gone to space not just to visit, but to stay, and in doing so, to make our lives better here on Earth. That was written today by President Barack Obama. And I read through it and listened to some of the quotes today from him. And I just have to say, I'm going to say a couple of things. But first and foremost, this very speech is 20 years too late. Better late than never. It made me proud. But the words in this today, it seems like the past. It's what we used to believe in. It's the wonder that we used to have. It's the way we looked at things in 1965, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73. And then they just went away. The other night, Rita and I had watched a clip of the Apollo-Soyuz joint venture. And I had said to, and Rita, oddly enough, didn't remember it. And didn't remember it like I did, but she was also very, very young when it happened. I wasn't. I suppose I was 11, 12 years old. And and this is what I had said. And I, in reading Obama's thing today about Apollo and sitting on his grandfather's shoulders, I remember where I was when the moon landings happened. I was with my Uncle Bob, who I saw last year in Florida after many years, sitting on my Uncle Bob's lap and watching it. But anyway, Soyuz was different. And when the Apollo-Soyuz happened, and it was on live television, I was waiting because the cameras were fixed on the Soyuz door, if you remember, for like 30 minutes. Any minute it's going to open, any minute. And we were just transfixed, me and my family. And then finally, the door opened. And the Soviet cosmonaut sticks his hands through the door and shook hands with the Apollo astronauts. And at that moment, right there, frozen in time, at that moment, the Cold War was forgotten. The tensions between our two countries were just washed away and erased. That somehow we could get this done. And my thoughts at that time were, we hate each other. How did we figure out how to join these two spacecraft together? Who did the design work to make sure that it would work? And who allowed that to happen? Because we don't even talk to each other. We're not allowed to fly to each other's country. We're not allowed to talk. We're not, it was just so bad and so negative when that went down. And that was the wonder of space. And we were up there, and I was just imagining at that time, these two spacecraft joined together, locked, embracing and orbiting the Earth. And our two countries were shaking hands on that. I thought, man, space is amazing. That's a space station up there. And they're, two countries separately have joined together and are shaking hands. And it was a great moment. And that was the last of everything. Space Lab crashed to Earth, remember? And that dissolved in this and the problems with the Russian space station. And it never really was a space station. And all of this, it just all stopped. And this speech right here that was published today should have been written and read and moved forward in 1975. 40 years ago. This is 2016. And I know that there is this push to get to Mars. I realize this. We're probably already there, but that's another story. And we talked about Mars all weekend. We had a friend over at the house. I really can't say too much about what's going on, but that is working with, one of the companies pushing to go to Mars. And this is exciting times. But it's 40 years. 40 years. This speech is 40 years out of date. It could have been read and had the same impact and continued in 1975. And the other thing that I'm upset about with this, and I'm happy that it was, I get that. I see it and I feel it and I hear it. But this is also in the last month of Obama's administration. Where was this 8 years ago? Right? Okay. So here we are today. Are we actually going to pull this off? The 2030s. So that's 14 years from now. I'll be in my mid-60s. Okay. So I'll be young enough to jump up and down and enjoy it and say, man, wow, this is really cool. But it's 40 years old. It's a great speech. It's 40 years old. And I will leave you with that. Tonight, also, speaking of NASA, really quick, Hurricane Matthew damages important NASA and SpaceX buildings, and NASA still is in the process of evaluating the damage done to its various facilities on the east coast of Florida. And current surveillance videos show that some buildings suffered exterior damage. The Solar Motor Assembly building being one, which is used to prepare for SpaceX launches, lost about half of its metal sheeting and was left with holes the size of a school bus. And I was looking at some of the pictures today. Meanwhile, the Kennedy Space Center was closed yesterday to survey the extent of destruction caused by Hurricane Matthew. I was talking to one of our friends of the show today, a guest that was in southern Florida, and they were in the crosshairs. And as we know, Hurricane Matthew turned right instead of left. And our friend and his community there were all okay. All right, so that's the good news. The other good news that I want to relay to everybody is this sip right here. I want you to listen. That is the Fade to Black roast from River Moon Coffee. Yeah. And wow, good stuff. Good stuff. I'm how do I say this? It is so complex, and I know how to break down coffee. This is so complex that it's good. It's great. And so we'll see how jittery I am by the end of the show, or if not, And because this is my first cup. First. I haven't really had a chance to enjoy its magnificence. But it arrived. And to see a bag of coffee with your picture on it and it says Fade to Black, it was a long time coming. So just let me say, thank you, River Moon Coffee. And we haven't published pictures yet. We haven't gotten things up, but go ahead, let her rip Tater Chip on TweetDeck. That is the Fade to Black River Moon Coffee. Thank you so much. And now, by tomorrow, I promise I'll give you a full breakdown of the coffee. Maybe I'll do it by the next break. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is our Egypt week. And I had said this yesterday, having Youssef on the show, Hakim's son, was one of the best birthday presents I could ever have. And that was yesterday. Today, it's Stephen Mehler. Stephen has known has known Youssef since Youssef was 11 years old. So he's watched Youssef grow up through all of this. And he has worked with Hakim for 19 years. And he has just gotten back from 2 trips to Egypt. He's got another one coming up. I think it's in February. And that's it. That's our amazing Egypt week. And I've just been in such a great mood. I'm so bummed out about all of the stuff that is going on in the media and the election and that stupid debate that was on Sunday that everybody made so much of. It was none of the above. We expected things to get resolved and things to happen, and here we are, man. It's November is coming up really quick, and I'm getting very close to never mentioning it again. I'm going to have to write out the next 4 years with all of you together. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. When I come back, Stephen Mehler, Egypt 2.0. I'll be right back.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil 3-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
Hi, folks. In a world of GMO, genetically modified organisms, that is, chemicals, processed foods, and a healthcare system that's unraveling like a cheap suit, it's time to prepare. God created herbs, and herbs help man. Our body can heal itself, just sometimes we need assistance. You need some help? GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Our mild detox is quite powerful with its unique blend of 8 different herbs. And if you're looking for more, our non-GMO supplements will help you with different needs you might have. Health should be a top priority. Take care of your health naturally. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Give your body a treat. Let the herbs do their thing naturally. Read all the testimonies on the website, GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Sickness and viruses are like intruders, and herbs are like warriors. Let the tea work for you. That's GetTheTea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletzky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station where the Fade-or-Nots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. Tonight, very special guest, Stephen Mehler, joins us once again for night 2 of our amazing Egypt week. Tomorrow night, William Henry's going to be here to wrap things up. Thursday is another Fader night with John Rappaport and his No More Fake newsroom. And, of course, followed by open lines all night long. Tonight, it's Stephen Mehler. Stephen holds 3 degrees in the sciences and is a trained field archaeologist and prehistorian. Mehler also served as a staff research scientist for the Rosicrucian Order. For almost 16 years, Mehler was a student, disciple, and close friend of Egyptian-born Egyptologist and indigenous wisdom keeper Abd el-Hakim Awyan, also known as Hakim. Hakim, Hakim deserves one name, Hakim. Stephen has written 2 books, The Land of Osiris, From Light into Darkness, and The Evolution of Religion in Ancient Egypt, based on his work and collaboration with Hakim and Stephen's over 45 years of research. Stephen is currently the director of research of his own Land of Osiris and research project. Stephen became associated with the Kemet School of Ancient Mysticism in 2009 and currently does tours to Egypt and other sites with them. Of course, the website is chematology.com. The links are right there at jimmychurchradio.com. And I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, the one and only Stephen Mehler. Stephen, good evening.
Good evening, Jimmy, and thank you very much, and a belated happy birthday.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that kind of weird to run my birthday with Youssef last night. What a gift that was, man. That was pretty cool.
It's interesting because we're going to speak about Egypt, and as you say, you were speaking last night to a genuine Egyptian. Well, it is an Egyptian tradition that they not only celebrate your birthday on your day of your birth, where they sing and dance and celebrate in your name, but they have the whole month. So like the whole month of October is really your birth month.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, that's what they do in Egypt.
Man, that's a lot of vodka, man. I don't know if I can survive.
Any excuse for them to party.
Yeah, right. Well, Stephen, again, welcome back to the program. And you know how important Egypt, megalithic stuff, lost history is to this show. It's what we do. And we managed to squeeze in some, fun conspiracy stuff and ufology and everything. But it all falls under, one umbrella. And that is just, we're trying to figure out what's going on. We're being lied to, and we're just trying to get to the truth, right?
Exactly.
And Egypt, the more that I learn about Egypt every single day, my friend, I get a little bit more pissed off. I get a little more sense of wonder. And I also know that we don't know anything. And that's the quest, right? Is it the same for you? You've been doing this for 45 years. Same thing. I mean, is it every day all 3 things happen?
Yes, and the fact is it never gets old. As I mentioned to you, the man that you spoke to last night that I know from a boy, I knew him when he was 11 years old. And next month, November, will be 25 years since I first went to Egypt. So people can work the math. He's going to be 36 years old in December.
Right.
So, but for me, it has been almost, I tell this story over and over so many times in interview for those that have heard me before. It gets old. But the truth is it goes back to when I was about 8 years old. And as I'm involved now in a documentary about the life of Hakim, a lot of things happened to him around the age of 6 or 8. And I have found through the years doing so many tours, like I've been to Egypt 20 times in these 25 years. Next year will be my 21st time, and it's about 18 different tours. So I have found that there are many people who have the same experience that I'm just about to relate. And it's not unique that at a young age, they see something about Egypt that impacts their life. For me, it's about the age of 8, to my mother's blessed memory, and this is a holy night where I can say that. She always had around our house the great magazines of the day, Life magazine and National Geographic. So my instance was opening an issue of National Geographic about the age of 8 and seeing a photograph of the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid. And as they say, I've never been the same since. It wasn't that profound an instance that was going to be my life's work, but it led to one thing to another, where it actually is around 1968, to cut things short, where pivotal, when we reach a certain age, we can look back and we can see certain teachers, of course, certain moments, certain books, certain instances that guided our life to be where we are. And, one instance was I was 8. Another one was 1968, where I discovered a used paperback written by Sigmund Freud that changed my life to be the study of ancient Egypt was going to be my life's work. So it is, it's going close now to 50 years. And this led to all the adventures of going to Egypt and meeting Hakim. And, that's what we could talk about if you want to go into any detail about that.
Sure. And for me, it was two things kind of happened around that age of 8 and 9 that you're referring to. One was The Mummy, right? The original one, right? And because in that, it had all of the symbolism. It was black and white, but you had the sarcophagus, you had the hieroglyphics, you had, of course, this mummy coming to life and stuff. But you had this introduction to this crazy culture that
magic.
Right.
Magic and supernatural and mysticism,
right?
And bringing back the dead to life.
Yes, and of course, Dr. Phibes, but anyway, and then I remember one of my life-changing things for me was at my grandfather's house with his collection of National Geographics, and on the cover was King Tut's gold sarcophagus, the face mask. And I stared at that for days. I just thought, this is the most perfect, beautiful thing ever. And what is this? What is Egypt all about? And it's never. I've never turned back at all.
Was that the time when it came to Southern California? Because the Tut exhibit was at the LA Museum in 1977.
This would have been 60. Late 60s, 1970, right in there. That was, but yeah, that was. The Time magazine coverage on the Tut tour, right, was pretty extensive too. Also in the United States, it was a good time. I wasn't in Southern California then. I was somewhere else around the world. But 77, I would have been down in South America.
For me, it was also that film. Of course, when I was a young kid, I used to stay up at night and watch all the great black and white horror movies from the 30s and 40s.
Right.
And the great thing about that film is that he did that was Boris Karloff.
Yes.
And he did Frankenstein in 1932, incredible characterization of the monster, but he didn't speak. This was the first film where people got to see what an incredible actor he was. And the individual he played is called Imhotep, which was based on an actual historical. We could actually get into that if you want to get into that detail. Who was Imhotep? But the film influenced me a great deal, and did the movie The Ten Commandments, which came out around 1955, 1956.
I kind of want to start here. My latest research over the last 6 months, which is never ending when it comes to Egypt. But one of the things that Yusuf and I touched upon last night, I want to get into it much deeper with you, is when we look at the King's List, actually, before the King's List, we had no real concept of time and how old Egypt is. And the Egyptians themselves had no idea how old their culture was, because at that time, and at 1000 BC, we're talking about 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years prior to we have no concept about how old Egypt really is. Cleopatra.
Now, wait a minute. Now, and again, Yusuf tends to tend towards more of a teaching of what is known as Egyptology than what his father created, which is chematology.
Yes.
His father talked about the oral tradition, that the tradition that has come down, that spoke about time way before there was writing and way before there was history, which we call prehistory. And that's where we date the pyramids and the Sphinx and the earliest part of the civilization. So he didn't recognize what we even called king's lists. He didn't even, first of all, everyone uses the word pharaoh. His father didn't even recognize that term as being correct, that we all, including myself, have used the term wrong. It comes from the ancient term per, which is house, which meant high house. It was the woman's house. Even before I ever met Hakim, when I did a master's thesis in the Egyptology for the Women's Studies Department at San Jose State University in 1978, I argued that the civilization we know as dynastic Egypt, which what you're talking about, was a matriarchy. Well, Hakim further taught that the ancient civilization was all matriarchal. All descent went from mother to daughter. So there were no male pharaohs. Everyone has used the term wrong. Now, then he mentioned king's list. Well, it even could be argued whether they were actually kings. What you're looking at is a list of titles of individuals who were part of the ruling class, who were able to pay the priests. Now, see, this is something that I was hoping we were going to get into tonight, and we're there, because it's something I'm still trying to teach Yusuf and the people we're working with, how his father taught what the civilization was in dynastic times that he was talking about, that it was a theocracy, not a monarchy.
Right.
And he fully doesn't understand that term yet. The priests ran everything. This is what you're going to enjoy, Jimmy, because we can bring this from the past to exactly where it is today. And I know we're going to deal with that tonight.
Yeah, and what
in my second book, I talk about the unholy alliance of between the priesthood, the so-called religious clergy, and the ruling class, the warrior classes, who came into Kemet, as we call it, in the times just before the dynasty started, and they formed this bond which exists today. This is what runs the world today. The religions and the so-called wealthy class who control the politicians. So it started in Kemet, Egypt, 5,000 years ago. This is what I document in my second book. So what we're talking about is a theocracy. The priesthood ran everything. They decided what was put on the walls, where it was put, what was constructed, where it was constructed. So anytime you turn on a show on the cable network History Channel and the Egyptologists come on, they'll say, well, Ramses II decided to do this, and Pharaoh this and Pharaoh that. And it's all nonsense. They were mostly figureheads.
And not only that. Oh, so let me get this thought out though. Before, the reason why I brought up the King's List is because that is what modern Egyptology is all based on, right?
Exactly. And it's also based on the Rosetta Stone,
yes,
the translations of Jean-Louis Champollion, who actually was translating from the Greeks who didn't know what the signs really meant.
I don't want to bring down the Rosetta Stone because it helped us a lot, right? But you are exactly right. And now, so my other half of the thought is this: we have the King's List, which is the basis of a linear time going backwards in academia. Right. But
there's five different kings. Just so you understand, there's 5 different kings lists.
Okay. And yes, there are. And we don't even need to go there, actually.
Okay.
So we don't. But it's that without the King's List, Egyptology doesn't know I want to use a bad word there. They don't have anything to base anything on.
Well, it's the writing.
Oral.
It's basically just what I talked about. It is the writing. They base everything on the writing. They base everything on the Rosetta Stone, on the translations of Champollion, and later on the translations of the Egyptologists like Budge, Gardner, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
All the ones who brought it down to the modern day. So they base it on what they can read on the walls. And one of the basic things that Hakim taught us was you cannot date a structure and monument by what is written on the wall. You can only date the writing itself. The writing could be put on thousands and thousands of years later.
And that's the most frustrating point that you and I need to stress to the audience tonight. It is all of this is based on when you hear somebody say something and put a date on something, 2400 BC or 2500 BC. It is based on something that nobody actually knows.
No.
Nobody knows the dating of anything. The King's List isn't based on a Roman calendar at 3000 BC.
Again, Hakim didn't recognize any calendars. He didn't recognize. He only would give the dating because he was a superb Egyptologist, academically trained. And so he understood how to talk in Egyptology. So he would say, if you want to give a date, he would give a date. But basically, he was an indigenous teacher, just like the Australian Aborigines. When you talk to them and you want to know dates, they will say something is old, older, or oldest. If you want to know a distance to them, they say something is far, farther, or farthest. Basically, that's how Hakim taught. He would say, what you want to call New Kingdom, what you want to call Old Kingdom, what you want to call Middle Kingdom, okay, we'll play that game. But it's just, this is older, this is older. And when we look through the layers as he taught, he would teach us in the field the brilliance of this man, the greatest teacher I've ever known in my life, could teach from both sides in the brain. And then what he did was like peeling away the layers of an onion. You've got in Egypt the modern Islamic layer. Then you have a Coptic Christian layer. Then you peel away a Roman layer. Then unknown to most people, you peel away a Jewish layer. Then is a Greek layer. Then is the dynastic layer. Then you find ancient Kemet. And when we show you the structures, the real machining, the incredible machining that we can talk about, there are no inscriptions on there. And then when you see the things that we can show you, these incredible diorite boxes in the Serapeum that are 100-ton boxes, 30-ton lids, 70-ton boxes, carved out of one single piece of granite, not pieced together, but one single piece. And then you see the inscriptions on it. You see the inscriptions are made by a different culture entirely. The true ancient stuff that we show you has no writing on it at all and is machined like we could do today, but would be hard-pressed to do, and we can talk in detail about that.
Yeah, one of my favorite videos is you walking through there into the first tunnel where you see the rooms on both sides, right, with those giant boxes.
Right.
And then your face, too, is precious on this. But anyway, you get a sense of the size.
Yes.
Because these are ginormous. I mean, beyond description. And then the other thing, because of the way that the video is shot, and with you, I think Brian Forrester is in the video that I'm talking about, and Youssef, is there's no way to get these boxes in there and turn the corners.
Exactly.
Right? That's the trip.
They had to be finished in situ. And so you could only get sometimes in these niches not more than 8 to 10 people to actually have finished these boxes. Nonsense.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't done that way.
No.
It wasn't done like we think.
Yeah,
they were working with all sorts of abilities and ability to work in the hardest materials. What a wonderful thing is, you talked about how you continually it never gets old to me, Jimmy. That's what's amazing. Every time I bring a tour group there, I tell them this is my 18th time, 19th time, 21st time. It never gets old. We always discover something new, and it always continues. Just for example, last year, in the Cairo Museum, Youssef made an incredible discovery. And I'm sure he didn't talk about it last night because he never brings attention to himself, just like his father. Mm-hmm. But in the cases, if we were standing now in front of the cases in the Cairo Museum, and now we can take photographs in there, which we've not been able to do for almost 19 years. It was stopped by Zahir Waste's politics. But now people can take photographs in the museum again. So we've got all these pictures of these incredible vases. These vases were found in a tomb by a British Egyptologist named Sir Walter Emery in 1936. 1946, the tomb of a priest named Sabu. There's any estimates from 10,000 to 30,000 objects of stone. It was obviously just a cache that was coming from wood, and most of these things had no inscriptions on them whatsoever. So we're looking at these incredible bowls. Now, we've gone through our work with this stone, and we've worked with a master geologists, and two in particular, Dr. Robert Schock and Susan Moore, who's our school geologist. And we've learned so much about stone from them. So we know that they worked in the hardest stones, basalt, diorite, and granite. So for a while, we were using as a marker red granite, rose granite, which is 7 on the Mohs scale, MOHS, the scale that geology uses to hardness of stone, diamond, of course, being 10. So 7, you have to be able to cut granite, you have to be able to cut through the quartz that's in there, which is 7. So an incredibly machined bowls, and this was our marker. So again, to get to the point, here's a case, and Yusuf calls me over, Stephen, come here, I want to show you something. And Yusuf is a master at stones because he's been a carver for years now, working with the hardest stones. So his real expertise is he really understands how it takes to cut stone. And so he's pointing to a really finely machined bowl to me. I look at it, it looks like breccia, it looks like diorite. And he says, Stephen, I think this bowl has corundum in it. And I went, whoa. Just happened to be that our school geologist, Susan Moore, was in the next room. Called her over, take a look at that. What do you think? She didn't say yes or no, and we'll talk about her a little bit. She said to him, you're getting good, which means a possibility. Now, Susan is a hardcore scientist.
Right.
She will not speculate. She likes to be sure of what she says. So to be sure, she would have taken a piece of that bowl, take it to her lab, test it, and found the materials in it. But if it means it contained corundum, and corundum does form in granitic deposits, means that that bowl was 885 on the Mohs scale, harder than granite, and machined to perfect lip and perfect radius around it. Means it had to be machined, could not possibly be known by any means that we know of to be carved by hand. Had to be machined, which Chris Dunn, of course, is the master of proving that years ago. Master machinist who went to Egypt in the 80s and then wrote his book, his landmark book, The Giza Power Plant in 1998. And has since wrote a great book in 2010 called Lost Technology of Ancient Egypt.
Now, I want to get back to all of those technologies that it would, to take to do that stuff. But I want to get back to one thing when we get back to the dating of the King's List. The thing that I find the most fascinating is because there is no linear time Roman or Greek calendar or anything that you can tie to.
That's the point. Every Egyptologist who's dated the King's List has put a different dating on it. Flinders Petrie, who was the father of Egyptology, academic Egyptology and modern archaeology, put dates on it that are 1,000 years earlier than modern Egyptologists accept. So they even themselves have a variety of different dates.
And which is, to my point, that King's List, if we look at it in, it could go back 50,000 years. It could go back 40,000 years. It could go back older than that. But even if it went to 10,000 BC, it throws everything off. And
well, we do. Now, here we come to a marker that we use. And you mentioned Brian Foster.
Yes.
I highly recommend a book he has just written called Aftershock. We talk about an event, a worldwide cataclysmic event. Many others have written about it. We can discuss it in detail, occurring around 12,000 years ago. So we talk about pre-cataclysmic civilization and post-cataclysmic civilization. So I'm talking about the pyramids, the Sphinx, some of the major structures I could show you in Egypt that are pre-cataclysmic, before the so-called flood. And as someone who studied this for many years, there are over 250 peoples on our planet that have a mythology of a flood myth, of a worldwide cataclysm, not local. The academics, the Egyptologists, and most of the archaeologists want to dismiss the flood myth that we know in our Bible as a local event that happened in the Middle East around 1400 BCE. We totally reject that. The event that we're talking about happened 12,000 years ago, approximately.
And wouldn't that, and this is why I get so upset, we are looking for, academia is doing the same thing. We're looking for this gap between 3100 BC in Egypt and going back to Göbekli Tepe and the other 10,000 BCE dates that we can start to tie together here. But we have this gap.
I'm glad that you brought up Göbekli Tepe, because people I know want us to discuss that. And I don't know if you asked Yusuf about it. We usually don't discuss a site in detail unless we've been there, and that's my policy. But what I know about this site is that in my opinion, it's overrated. And we can talk about it in detail, because I've actually read the site reports of the German archaeologist who excavated the site. And he dated it as a Neolithic site, which means it's not as old. It's not pre-cataclysmic, it's post-cataclysmic. Now, I can tell you, Jimmy, just the Giza Plateau itself is all we need to talk about, that as an occupation site goes back 65,000 years. The Sphinx, as Hakim dated it, is 54,000 years old. So
Which
there's
is
nothing that's been discovered that's older than she is.
But which is to my point here, Stephen, is that this gap in time that we have between 10,000 BCE and Egypt as traditionally dated in academia, there's a gap of time there, 6, 7, 8,000 years.
Another student of Hakim's, Barbara Han Clow, mentioned that in her latest books, called Catastrophobia at first, and second, now she's reissued it as Awakening the Planetary Mind, another book I highly recommend. She talks about that gap exists in archaeology. That's why you see the academicians have so much trouble. The cataclysm perhaps wiped out 90% of all human civilization. We today, me and you speaking, and everybody that's listening, are the survivors of that 10% that survived. And that 10% that survived carried with them a trauma, a phobia of what caused that cataclysm, which there are many different explanations. We can get into the different theories about what caused it, but they carried their stories all down to the answer. They were sitting around the campfires. They had to go back to subsistence survival. We're talking about the idea, and one of Hakim's major teachings is we throw out the idea of, as you mentioned, linear evolution. Darwin was right about certain things, about other things. He was absolutely wrong. There is no such thing as linear evolution. Everything moves in cycles. Everything that exists in the universe, in subatomic to organic to inorganic, moves in cycles. So has human history and prehistory. So we've gone through different cyclical changes. So we had to actually be from high civilization that could create pyramids as free energy machines that we can discuss all around the world, and tremendous structures out of stone, the hardest materials on this planet, to then becoming almost cave people, living in huts, having to survive a tremendous tsunamis, tremendous earthquakes, things we exist today. I was just mentioning to some friends, because of the Hurricane Matthew, that every time one of these things happened, it is a tragedy for sure, but it always brings out the best in humanity. It never is then that you're white, black, Jew, Gentile, I'm Muslim, I'm this, I'm that. It's who's in need, we're there. Because we carry that in ourselves, the memory of these cataclysmic events, and we're ready to jump down to drop the money in the bucket, the Red Cross, whatever.
There you have it, everybody. Tonight, we're going to light a few fires. Our guest, Stephen Mehler. This is our Amazing Egypt Week. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. More with Stephen right after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
You're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station.
Angioprim can unclog blocked arteries and improve blood flow in all parts of your body. Angioprim is oral chelation. Easy, simple, liquid oral chelation. You take it with juice before breakfast and forget about it. Angioprim works fast, unlike old-fashioned chelation that takes hours. Just log on to angioprim.com. That's Angioprim, ANGIOPRIM, angioprim.com. Angioprim users say they have more energy, more strength, more endurance. Increased circulation and blood flow will make all your body parts work better. Log on to angioprim.com to get more information on how you can get started and start feeling better, having fun, and doing more again. Lots more. Talk to a trained Angioprim consultant. Call Angioprim toll-free at 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221. Or log on for complete information. Angioprim.com. That's angioprim.com. Find out how Angioprim can work for you. Get the facts about Angioprim at angioprim.com.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And this is Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring two Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The two full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Teppy.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Stephen Mehler. Stephen is obviously ready to go. So buckle up. Let's do this. And yes, drinking the new, hey, Stephen, check this out. A coffee company, River Moon Coffee, sent us our own, very own Fade to Black blend. We got the beans today. Is that the moment you know that you've arrived in life, yes, when you're drinking your own coffee?
Yes. It's like here in Colorado, we have strains of cannabis named after famous people.
That'll be next, right? The Fade to Black.
Well, sure, you guys are going to go over, I'm sure.
You crack me up. This coffee, now that I've drank a cup and a half, it's strange. It's almost like, even though it's straight bean right now, it almost tastes mocha-ish. It's got a very strong chocolate thing going on.
Mm-hmm. Where are the beans from?
They are from, I will get more on that. They have a special arrangement with a bush pilot. They're going to some crazy islands. I'm not kidding. It's really good stuff. I'll get that info for you. Now, this is the thing. And I think it's one of the most important subjects that I want you to address tonight. Archaeologists, historians, Egyptologists want us to accept this fact that Egypt was an upright and fully functional civilization by chance. It just happened, and there's no explanation to that. Exactly. And of course, there's 100,000 years of development before that. So when they say that, why? How hard is it for you to keep your mouth shut?
Oh, it's been too many years.
Right.
I can tell you a story. I mean, we could talk about, again, the politics come in here about the suppression of information that's come out of Egypt. And the name, of course, is Zahi Hawass, which always comes up.
Yes.
So I can give you a story about 1987, that far back. I'm sitting in an audience in the Rosicrucian in San Jose, California, in the Rosicrucian Auditorium, where Zahi Hawass has been invited to give a talk. And he's giving a lecture talking about Khufu this and the Great Pyramid and that. And the people had to restrain me in the audience from not standing up and really attacking him and questioning. And I had to leave. I had to get up and actually physically leave. So this has been many, many years for me. I don't debate with Egyptologists anymore. One of the wonderful things that Hakim's teachings were, he would say to me, Stephen, this is not theory that we are teaching. This is either you accept it, come on in, let's talk about it, or if not, have a nice day. But we're not debating this. So if people want to argue about the age of the Sphinx and the things I'm talking about, the age of the pyramids, that's fine, but I don't debate it. Because we've seen enough physical evidence, science has been involved in this. What was great is that Hakim gave us a basis that we could bring in all of the sciences to verify. And again, from the years, it's from the first time I met him in 1992, for the 16 years that I worked with him to the end in 2008, which continues to this day, it only verifies the things he said. Nothing has been denied. Like when he talks about the age of the Sphinx, he puts it out to everybody. Prove me wrong. And geology only proves him right.
Yes, and it's getting closer and closer to acceptance. I don't know if they'll ever rewrite textbooks, but
well, it's a beautiful thing that the great John Anthony West, who you may probably have interviewed, has said. He talks about when you come up with a new idea, they attack you ad hominem. It means they attack you personally, vociferously. First of all, no, I'm sorry. There's three phases you should go through when you come up with a new revolutionary idea like you're talking about we're doing tonight. First, they totally ignore you. They pretend you don't exist. You're not even there. They brush you right aside. Second phase, when you start getting adherents, when you start getting people, disciples, who are starting to agree with you, then they attack you vociferously. They attack you ad hominem. They attack your credentials. They attack your background. They don't attack what you think. Ideas, if they have no background, they can do that. They'll attack you personally. Third is where we're approaching. Finally, all the old line dies out. The dinosaurs are gone. The young adherents have come in. It's become the norm. That's what they're teaching. So then all that the old guard is left will say is, oh, we knew it all along.
We're close, aren't we?
Yeah, it's we're in a paradigm shift. Hakim called this time the awakening, because he taught we're in cycles. So we're coming out of what I call a 5,000-year cycle of darkness, which we can talk about in detail. We talk about it a lot in my two books and in our lectures. And we're coming into the time now, why we're doing what we're doing, why we're talking this way, why we're calling what we're calling the New Age, which is not the New Age. The great Nick Nocerino, who was the master of crystal skulls, who I worked with, and crystals, used to say, why they call it the New Age? The recovery of ancient wisdom is not new. It should be called the Now Age. So it is the awakening. It's what Hakim called it, when we would finally, all these different pieces of the puzzle would start to make sense. Like you say, we really don't know, but it's starting to get indications. We have masters, we have traditions now that we can discover who've kept this lineage, who've kept a tradition for thousands of years, teaching these ways hidden from the monarchy, the theocracy that existed. Had to be, this goes on. You can see it start in Egypt. We can go on to all talk tonight how even in dynastic times, how you see this upheaval where patriarchy comes in, starts to reduce the ancient matriarchy, and you get control of information, just like today. That is a facet of this modern age of patriarchy, the control of information. You control knowledge, you control people. That's why we have to free our minds. As we said in the 60s, free your ass and your mind will follow. But now we have to just open. The basic thing that Hakim wanted all of us to do is think for ourselves. How we're going to be involved in a major documentary about him now. I'm working with a group with a wonderful young producer-director named NEXT. It's unusualaccomplishment.com. We're going to do a major documentary about chematology and Hakim. And one of the things is going to be this quote that he always gave: if you don't like the system, create your own. This is why we don't teach Egyptology. We teach chematology.
All right, let's clear up a couple of things. I'm not going to give you my opinions or my thoughts. Did Senefru build the pyramids? Did he design them? Did he build them?
No pyramid was built for any individual human being. They were built for what we call the sesh, for the people, for everyone. There were power plants, there were machines. They never were intended to be tombs for anyone. Some of the later, in the dynastic times, they built symbolic pyramid. They built pyramids to be symbolic tombs. But listen to me, and everyone listen carefully. In the history of Egypt, in the history of Egyptology, no intact burial has ever been found in Egyptian pyramid. End of discussion.
That's it.
Only intuition, only stories, no grave goods. The Great Pyramid has never found anything that links to this individual except some mysterious inscriptions in chambers above the king's chamber, which are obvious forgeries created in 1838.
Okay, so let's clear up something else, and thank you for that. See, I can't argue with you because I agree. Okay, so let's back up. Let's go to Dynasty 1. Let's go to Mene. When Mene was alive, were the pyramids already sitting there?
Yes.
Oh, I love you, man. I love you, man.
You know how we can do it? See, I'm an archaeologist, so we can find the evidence. There is a first dynasty wooden panel that still exists in fragments. It is from an early king, Den or Aha, and it shows on it an obvious image of the Sphinx that is at least 1,500 years before they say she was carved, and she is the operative word. But so we have physical evidence of the Sphinx being in existence. We have in the Nubian Museum in Aswan an ostrich egg, which they themselves, Egyptologists, have dated to be pre-dynastic, before Menes. It shows the three major pyramids of Giza on it and the Nile River going right by it, which it did in antiquity. This is 2,000 years before the Great Pyramid was supposed to have been built. So the physical evidence is there, Jimmy.
It's
to
there.
Prove that they're wrong.
I want to debate. How can we debate if we're agreeing on everything? But okay, so now let's back it up a little bit before that. Let's go 2,000 years before the Dynasty 1, and let's go into Dynasty. Let's go to Scorpion 1 and 2. Let's go back a couple more thousand years.
You see, they have found more evidence with more ancient kings lists, so they themselves now have a Dynasty 0,
right?
A Dynasty 00,
right?
They don't know how far back to go.
They don't,
because they'll keep going back.
And aren't you impressed that I know these things? Aren't you impressed? Okay,
yes,
so
did your homework.
Now let's back up. I've been studying this forever, man. I love it. And I love finding out how little I know, right? That's the thing. You know, it's never ending. Okay, so let's back up now. Let's back up a couple of more thousand years. Were the pyramids already sitting there for Scorpion 1?
The pyramids were built over 20,000 years ago, the Giza pyramids.
So I wanted to have fun and go back step by step, but you just want to just wipe the slate and go, let's go back 20K.
Right. Because Hakim didn't believe in one of the popular trends, which is post-cataclysmic, is what's called archaeoastronomy. And that's looking at these sites, like the pyramids. Robert Bouval is big on this, and pointing to places in the stars, constellations, star system, and saying the ancients knew that and they connected to that. Hakim totally disagreed with that because he said that something like astronomy, astrology is modern, it's post-cataclysmic. He would only say, when talking about the Great Pyramid, that when it was aligned to the pole star. And the pole star, when it was aligned, was Polaris. Polaris is about to become our pole star again. So he would say that it's what even the dynastic Egyptians themselves, when they had calendars, they called it the Great Year. The Great Year was 26,000 years, approximately, a full precession.
Right.
It's actually 25,920, if you want to be precise. But everybody says 26,000 years. So Hakim is saying to us, when the Great Pyramid was first aligned, when those who were doing a system, they aligned it to Polaris 26,000 years ago. So we say 20,000 years ago, the Great Pyramid and the pyramids, all the pyramids in Egypt and Giza, were fully functioning, as we call them, power plants, as Chris Dunn labeled them.
Now, when we look at the other megalithic sites, and it doesn't matter which one you pick, it doesn't matter if you want to go with Luxor or any of the other temples, complexes, those look fresher, right? To me, yes. To my eyes. And when you look at the Sphinx and you look at the Giza Plateau, that looks aged, right?
There's nothing older than she. Right. I could give you the full geology of her. The head of the Sphinx, as she appears now, is modern. That is probably dynastic. The head of the Sphinx has been carved back many different times. As it is now, it is not even a male king's face. It is that of a black African woman, the mother of a man who may have become a king or someone who united the country together. And he had the face of the Sphinx, the head of the Sphinx, recarved in his mother's image. That's why we always refer to her as she. She was originally a lioness human face. If you have studied, you know the face of Sekhmet or Tefnut or Mut, the lioness human face. That's what she originally was. But the body, the erosion, is where geology comes in, and where the great Sir Dr. Robert Schoch came in, brought in by John Anthony West in the late 80s, early 90s, actually met John Anthony West in Egypt in 1992, and he had just finished up fresh work with Schoch. And I met Schoch in 96, and Schoch now does tours with the Kemet School with Yusuf, and we also have our geologists who agree. So we could go into a detailed analysis of the geology of the Sphinx Hollow, if you want, and how we date it as being the oldest.
You know what's really funny? I don't need to have somebody change the opinion of my eyes, what my eyes tell me. I'll give you an example. If somebody flashes you, Stephen Mehler, a picture of, and just pick the ultimate female figure that you have in your mind, Sophia Loren, right? Let's say you're looking at a picture of Sophia Loren, and somebody says, that's a dude. You're going to go, no, that's a woman. No, it's a man. And it's the same thing with the head of the Sphinx. When they try to tell me that that's Khufu or that's a pharaoh and he's had his face, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, that's a chick. Right. That's a female face. There is nothing masculine about that.
Where you get it is you look at her from profile, and it was a great article written in the 90s by an African-American dentist, and he could not get it published in a scientific journal, so it winds up in the Rosicrucian Digest, where I was then reading everything, because I actually published in the Rosicrucian Digest, and I had read great articles about Egypt in the Rosicrucian Digest. They couldn't get published in scientific journals. But he was clearly saying that when you look at the Sphinx from profile, it exhibits what's called medically in physiology and anatomy bimaxillary it's called bimaxillary prognathism.
It's okay.
Prognathism.
Yes.
It means the lower jaw juts out above the upper jaw, and it only exists in black Africans.
It's female. And and they want to they push this dogma on us, right? And I'm telling you, anybody with any sense about them at all looks at the Sphinx and sees a female face.
That's right.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but they want to, because it's the only way that it will that it fits their published information in as Senefru.
As you mentioned, that's why you mentioned about debates and about the fight. It happens to be that the discipline of academic Egyptology is one of the most conservative of all academic disciplines, and has been some of the hardest to change their basic paradigms, which is based on this Greco. Again, we labeled Egyptology as Greco-Roman mythology. The Greeks and the Romans, with their patriarchal understanding, looking at kings and their sons, that's what they saw. The priests laughed at the Greeks and told them lies and stories, and those stories came down to become the basis of Egyptology. That these individuals had these incredible monuments built to house their body that were total failures, that were completely robbed within years of being buried. Now, how can the genius that constructed these things, and you never can see it from photographs, you can never really tell, as great as the videos we have, and as you mentioned, Brian Foster has taken amazing videos in Egypt, but you have to see it for yourself. You have to stand in front of these stones. You have to go inside. You have to understand that you're looking at a structure that is, when it was supposedly had a cap, it didn't have a cap. We'll say 450 feet high. It's carrying anywhere between 6 and 7 million tons of limestone, estimated anywhere between 2.5 to 3.9 million different blocks of stone, almost 4 degrees precision to perfect north. And again, we could go on for the rest of the show just to talk about all the mathematical freaks who talk about the pyramid. It's this, it's that, it's every mathematical constant that we have. It was designed and built by utter geniuses.
No, it was made with rope and stone hammers. You didn't know that? It's one of the most comical. It's one of the most comical things when, you know, it's so funny because you look, you see, they give you the figures, you know, magnetic north, it's level, it's this, it's perfect. The red granite king chamber and the 50-ton this and that and Aswan and they tie all of this together. Then they look at you and go, yeah, man, and they made it, you know, with their bare hands. You know, it's like, dude, stop with that. Just stop. No.
The full history of this is not known by most people because even in the 80s and 90s, under the direction of Zahi Hawass and Mark Lehner, American Egyptologist, they were having NOVA and PBS crews coming in to try to duplicate this, hire local people from the village, and this is why we know everything that goes on, because they come from the village where Yusuf still lives, where the family still is. Hakim would always know what was going on all the time. They hired people to the village to drag these blocks on wooden sledges, and the truth be known that 2 villagers died, were crushed to death under these blocks, just for some stupid American PBS special to try to prove a nonsense theory, as Hakim says himself. And we have video of him teaching on his last tour with me in 2007, which was completely videoed. He says it's a childish story to even try to believe this. A childish story.
You know what's funny? If I'm a pharaoh, I'm a king, right? I'm the big masculine war, you know, king with my armies, and I'm running Egypt, and I have my artist carve my face in the Sphinx, and he does that. Somebody died that day because that's a female's face. That's the end of that story. Well, it's not Khufu. That's certainly true.
It is. And again, from the tradition as Hakim told it, it's a matriarchal civilization.
Absolutely.
So their understanding was called Nut, N-U-T. She, a feminine concept. She was, you could say goddess, but it's not a goddess. But it was, she controls all that is created and all that is uncreated. So think about even the invisible dimensions. So when she wanted to manifest in physical form on the planet, she spit. And where she spit is called Tefnut. And you can look it up. People can Google it. It's one of the goddesses, the goddess of moisture and air. No, Tefnut is the Sphinx. Because, and people always say, why? And, you know, we use the scientific term. When we expectorate, each time, there's no mass, there's no volume, it can't be weighed. So the ancients are saying, with this understanding, you cannot define the Great Mother. But if we must, she spit, we'll make a statue to her. So she's the oldest of the old, the Alpha and the Omega. There was nothing before the Sphinx. So no Göbekli Tepe, no other area around the world that will be found that we know of that is older than she.
What's the hole in the top of her head for?
Oh, there's a long story that the Sphinx is actually hollow. And that was once that they opened up and went inside to look around. Could be even as far back as medieval times.
It looks like a door.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like an entrance.
The story is that she actually was, I don't know how it could possibly have been done, hollowed out. So that the top part of her is hollow. That's easily can be done. Again, seismographs, that easily can be scientific tested. This is one of the things Dr. Robert Schoch wanted to go back to Egypt to test. He had all sorts of experiments he wanted to do, and Zahi Hawass blocked him from returning to continue that. So again, the politics cannot be left out of this, because the politics goes back to dynastic Egypt. It goes back to this time. And Hakim, the master philologist, let me tell a quick story. You talk about, as you said before, what you don't know. I was working with a man named Bob Vaughter in the 90s. He was my research partner. He was a musician and acoustic engineer. At the time, he was going for his master's degrees in anthropology at San Jose State University. Hakim came to the U.S. in 97, was in California, in Alameda, California. We brought his teacher, his professor, her doctorate. She was a woman, had her doctorate was in linguistics. That was her field of anthropology. We brought her into Hakim. Bob and I left her in the room with Hakim. We said, you go ahead, ask anything you want. And we went outside, and we were talking for a while. After about a half an hour, she came out to go to the bathroom. And as she was going to the bathroom, she said to us, I feel like I'm back in kindergarten. Now, she didn't say junior high school. She didn't say high school.
Right.
She didn't say first day of college.
Right.
She said kindergarten. This man was a master philologist linguist that ever lived. Could speak at least 7 languages fluently. Again, I saw him fake it in Japanese, like I can fake it in Arabic. I know key phrases. I can't converse. He couldn't converse in Japanese, but he knew enough to talk to Japanese tourists. At least 7 that I can name fluently, including ancient Commission, which very few people could understand.
Yeah, he's so fascinating to listen to. It's mesmerizing. Yeah,
So he would say that it's just what is written is not what the truth is. The truth is that you have to go beyond. You have to see, again, the stones talk to him. They talk to me. They talk to Yusuf. This is why Yusuf is what his father wanted him to be. He's his own man. We don't just parrot and repeat rote. I do more, of course, because I'm the loyal disciple. I'm the loyal student. But Yusuf, he wanted Yusuf to go off and be his own man. He's the only one of his sons who really followed in his father's footsteps, and still not academically, because people don't realize that Hakim walked in both worlds. Again, as I say, he had dual degrees from Fuad University, which is today Cairo University, in Egyptology and archaeology. He did graduate work in archaeology at Leiden University in Holland. So he was academically trained, knew Egyptology better than the Egyptologist. But then he was an indigenous wisdom keeper. We can talk about how from the age of 6, he was sent to a Sufi master, and that's where he started. He was taught to meditate at that age. At age 8, his uncle arranged for him to become a boy clearing rocks on the Giza Plateau. This is why he was so intimate with Tefnut, with the Sphinx, and why he would say she was 54,000 years old. Somebody proved me wrong. Because at the age of 8, he was clearing stones for American Egyptologist George Reisner from Harvard University, who got the ability to dig around the Giza Plateau. And it's because of Reisner that it's attributed to this king, not Khufu, but Khafra, called Kefren to the Greeks, who they think is the face of the Sphinx. Why? Because Reisner was digging around the Sphinx, found some wonderful tunnels, and he found some statues buried there that would come the time of Khafra. And so he said that must be who the Sphinx is, and around that and this and that. Right. And of course, that's just dubious evidence. It's not solid data points in archaeology. There's no evidence. There's no written records. The Egyptians themselves, who wrote everything down at this time period, did not give us a written record how the Sphinx was carved or how the Great Pyramid was built.
We're going to head to a break right here. When we come back, and I want you to think about this, Stephen, I have a conundrum in my brain, and that conundrum is the main tunnel entrance up to the King's Chamber going into the gallery, that first 300 feet, right? That tunnel, was it, don't answer me now, was it built as the pyramid was built, or do you think the pyramid was finished and then the tunnel carved up to it? Because both of them are engineering nightmares, either concept. And I want you to think about that. We're going to take a break. I want your answer when we come back. Our guest tonight, Stephen Mehler, the one and only. As promised, we're lighting some fires, and that's why he is here. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter, @JChurchRadio. Stephen, what's your Twitter?
Don't have
no Twitter for Stephen. Okay. We'll be right back. Stay with us, everybody.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Work with your doctor when taking medications. Make Protovite part of your healthy lifestyle.
HealthForLiberty.com is your source for Protovite, a powerful nutritional supplement that's a true breakthrough for your health. Poor digestion makes it nearly impossible to absorb the nutrition your body needs. Protovite is a liquid multi-nutrient formula with patent-pending absorption technology and the highest quality ingredients to nourish every cell in your body.
My name is Sandra White. 6 weeks ago, when I started taking Protovite, I was on 14 medications, from everything for blood pressure to fibromyalgia. In the first 10 days, my blood sugar dropped 50 points, and my fibromyalgia pain is gone. And so was 12 of the 14 medications that I was taking. I'm 66, living life and loving it.
Go to healthforliberty.com right now. That's healthforliberty.com.
Thank you, Protovite, for giving my life back.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Stephen Mehler. Hashtag F2B is the sandbox. Hashtag F2BQ are the questions. And we do have a lot lined up here for Stephen, and I will get to those. But, Stephen, the reason why I ask about that tunnel, it's because of this. If you are going to build the tunnel as you are constructing the pyramid, that is an engineering feat beyond words. I don't even need to get into what kind of math and architecture is involved there. But if you you build the king's chamber, you finish the pyramid, and then you dig the tunnel and carve it to make it utterly perfectly straight, that is I just can't I can't wrap my head around that. So
let's back it up. Have you been to Egypt and been inside the Great Pyramid?
No, I'm going next year with you.
Oh, great. Okay, you have what's called the robber's entrance. When you're talking about how we go into the Great Pyramid today, we bring our groups in, we go all the way up, and we have all chambers open to us. Our group is unique. We have all three chambers open. A lot of groups don't. But there is what's called a robber's entrance. So obviously that's how we go in now, was something that was carved in. Now you're talking about the actual passageways themselves.
Yes.
What's called the ascending passageway and descending passageway.
That's right.
Okay. They are original. King's Chamber, what's called Queen's Chamber, all misnomers, they are original. What's called the Robber's Tunnel, where we go in, comes from 810 A.D., from the son of the Caliph of Baghdad, who broke into the Great Pyramid.
Blew it up with dynamite, right?
No. Actually didn't. They didn't have dynamite then. It wasn't invented till the 1880s.
I'm joking, but they just totally...
But they had a very unique thing. What they did is they boiled vinegar till it was boiling hot and threw it on the limestone, and then were able to break it open with their axes, with then steel chisels, and actually broke their way into the Great Pyramid. So that's how we go in today. But that entrance comes into the technology that you're talking about, the ascending passageway, where you have to climb up. Now, the ascending passageways, all of them are 26-degree angle, and they're very interesting because that's the tilt of our planet. 26.5 degrees is actually the obliquity of the Earth itself. All these passageways are at those angles. But also, it is 3 feet 11 inches high and 3 feet 5 inches wide. So this is where you have to duck walk up 50 feet to where you can stand up in the Grand Gallery, which is 28 feet high and is 155 feet long, but you also have to walk up at a really steep angle to get into what we now call today the King's Chamber. Below the Grand Gallery at the bottom is an entranceway which goes into what we call the Queen's Chamber. There also is an entranceway that goes down to what is known as the Subterranean Chamber. And this is what we get open to us, which takes a brave person. I've done it once, and that's it. Won't do it again, because you're going down 350 feet.
Ain't gonna do it. I ain't gonna do it. No, I'm not gonna do that. But...
No, claustrophobia comes in to people who are, but I've actually had people who had claustrophobia come in the Great Pyramid and overcome it, which is a great kind of thing for them.
Well, not
claustrophobic
me.
Pyramids are tough.
I'm not going to challenge myself on that. But so
the amazing thing about that is the first 100 feet of this 350 is constructed stone, limestone. The last 250 feet is in the limestone bedrock. When Sir William Flinders Master Petrie examined it in the 1880s, he found that it only deviated from absolute straight the 350 feet by 1/4 of an inch.
It's insane. So, well, back to my point, the ascending, going up to the Grand Gallery. Was that, what do you think? Was it done after the pyramid was constructed or during?
This is all original design.
No. That's not what I'm suggesting here. Okay. Maybe you're misunderstanding me.
Oh, okay.
No, the architects, they're there. They built the pyramid. Did they then carve that tunnel to go up to the Grand?
It's constructed stone. Those tunnels are made of constructed stone. They're not carved.
So that sounds so impossible to me.
Think of this, Jimmy. Hakim taught that we're innately born with 360 senses. 180 we label feminine, 180 we label masculine. It's called circular consciousness. We're taught we only have 5 senses. He would say what people are calling the gods and goddesses of Egypt. We could say nature is the term. Where our English word nature comes from is within us. We had that capacity. So understand that the people, we, not aliens. Now, if you want to get into a debate this last hour, we could debate whether aliens had anything to do with this or not. That would be a debate.
Okay.
But the point is, whoever built this, according to Abdel Hakim, was using 360 senses. So there was not only not a written language, there was not a spoken language. Sound was sacred. Sound was used to cut, shape, and lift stone by creating anti-gravity fields with water. That's how the pyramids were built. So they were thinking and talking telepathically. They were thinking in solid geometry, not in 3 dimensions, 4, 5, and beyond. So they could conceive of just what you're talking about, the internal structure of the Great Pyramid, just like we conceive a flat plane, a picture in a flat level, because basically that's all our 5 senses, or second dimension, maybe the third dimension, with our 5 senses. But we're talking about where sacred geometry and solid geometry came from. So the Great Pyramid was totally designed that way from the beginning. All the chambers, all the passageways, to design for making it a great acoustic machine.
It's beyond comprehension to picture
there.
this. I know it's beyond comprehension.
60 senses, right?
Now, do you think that there is an exit to the King's Chamber that we haven't discovered yet?
No, they discovered it. They closed it up. I was privy to all of the illegal digging that was done in the Great Pyramid in the 90s and 2000s by, once again, Zaki Khawass. And so there was originally, right where, again, when I take you in there, I'll show it to you, where the box is today. We don't say sarcophagus because no one was ever buried there. It was used as a vessel of initiation for centuries, where people would sit in there like it was lay in there like it's a sarcophagus, but it never was. We call it an acoustic resonant box. That's what it was. It's not in its original position. Its original position is what we call today between the two relieving chambers, the two exits where air is supposed to come in. Now, why did they have air for a corpse and a mummy? They never can explain that either. But there are two chambers that led to the outside. That's where the box originally was. Where the box is today, when you'd go in there when I went in 1992, in late 90s, there was a grate over a hole that was in the King's Chamber that led to obviously another tunnel going down out of the King's Chamber. Since then, they dug in there. Zaiwas was doing, again, we could do the whole show just talking about these things. Right. And it's now covered up. It's concreted over, and there's another block there, so people don't know that there originally was entrance there. Yes, I have found other chambers in the Great Pyramid myself that are never discussed by Egyptologists. So there are many chambers still in there. But these are the major chambers that we have opened.
Because for me, I haven't been there, but when I look at the photographs of the King's Chamber, down where we'll call it the sarcophagus for now, but in that corner on the lower part of the King's Chamber, that block there doesn't look like everything else that's in there. It looks.
That's what you're talking about. You're exactly talking about.
Yeah.
That happened in the 2000s.
Is that right?
The grate was removed. They went down in there looking for, they think they're going to find Khufu's body, or they're going to find something else or whatever. I could go deeper into that. But yeah, you're exactly right. And there are other areas too that have been anomalously, you can see where they've been covered up. Again, I'm a trained archaeologist. I was trained by one of the great archaeologists of the 20th century. I can recognize when something is put in there modern. This is why when I can take you to the Sphinx, I can show you layers and layers and layers of repair work that have been done on her. And the earliest repair work goes back to the so-called Old Kingdom period. Now, does it make any sense that they had to repair her when they carved her?
No.
Of course not.
No, not at all. And
that's when they started repairing her. The date that they give for her is when they started repairing her.
The other thing that I want to talk about is the all of the shafts that exit out of the different chambers. Is that just like the ascending passageway is the engineering feat to do that? Well, you have the same mindset, the same engineering genius with all of the shafts that are exiting the Great Pyramid. And I'm sorry, that is not Stone Age man. That is designing
talking about these things with Hakim in the early 90s.
Right.
He said to me there would be two people that would need to come into the field to really open it up for us. One would be an engineer, and one would be a geologist. The geologist had already showed up, Robert Schock with John Anthony West, who used Hakim as a tour guide, as did Greg Braden, as did Barbara Hanclau, and a lot of famous people.
Right.
And so the geologist had already come in. Then comes the engineer, unbeknownst to Hakim and me, 1985, Christopher Dunn, master engineer, was recruited from Britain at the age of 18, 19 as a master machinist to come to the U.S. to work in the American Space Age program. It worked in space age machining and precision for the NASA program. It had to be within millions and millions of a micron to be exact. So he understood precision. As soon as he stepped in the Great Pyramid in 1985, he said, my God, this is not a tomb. This is a machine. He saw it through the engineer's eyes. And that's what we needed. Since Chris Dunn, many, many, many engineers have joined the fold. We have many with us that come and all agree that the engineering is beyond our understanding, like you say. And we have to start from underground. I talk about the Sphinx above ground. We have a whole discussion of what's underground, tunnels that were drilled through limestone bedrock to bring water to the site, because water was the source of the energy with the sun, with crystal, all of these things working together with sound, with acoustics, so that the hydraulic engineering alone boggles the imagination.
I wanted to ask you about about just that. What, and I know Christopher Dunn's ideas behind this too as well, but ultimately, what have you concluded about the Great Pyramid and what its ultimate use was?
It was a free energy machine. multiple functions. We're going to find out again. We have found things that, I mean, you're going to go on and on and on. The more science that opens up, the more we've found. I mean, it emits radio waves, it's electricity, electromagnetic waves, microwaves. It is an 8-sided microwave antenna dish. Each side is concave, Great Pyramid. They're not flat. It's 8-sided. It's not 4-sided. It is an 8-sided microwave antenna. It brought in radio waves, no doubt. And again, quantum waves. We have one of the world's leading physicists involved with this. His name, and I'll say it slowly for everybody to listen, Vladimir Krasnelhovitz. We call him Dr. K. You can tell why.
Okay.
He lives in Ukraine. He was part of the Soviet Union. As a 19-year-old wunderkind, he helped design the Mir space station for the Soviet Union. He now lives in Ukraine, working for the National Physics Academy at perhaps $75 a month. That's where Ukraine is today. World-class physicist. He has actually come up with a unified field theory, gone beyond Einstein. He calls it intertimes. Just to make a long story short, he believes whoever designed the Great Pyramid has it pulsing quantum waves. If we ever have the funding, we're looking for funding to do this, we can just bring him from Ukraine. He has a Russian scientist who has developed a portable device. The man's name is Tessie. It's called the Tessie device, can measure quantum waves. So what we do is we go into King's Chamber. We establish a baseline, which means, of course, naturally quantum waves, cosmic waves are hitting the Earth all the time. And then you see if you can measure pulsing quantum waves. If you measure pulsing quantum waves, it was intentionally designed by the creators, meaning they had a knowledge of quantum physics we're just approaching today.
So what's your theory for the use? Was it to communicate to outer space, or was it used terrestrially?
Now you can bring in that element.
Right.
Because once we used to talk about why the Great Pyramid of all pyramids is not capped. And my friend Bob Vaughter had in the 90s was a theory that there was a great crystal rod that came up. There's supposed to be a concave great crystal based 1,000 feet under the Great Pyramid. This is, again, people read Land of Osiris, my first book. It's talked about American Egyptologist named Kinnaman, J.O. Kinnaman, who with Flinders Petrie claimed they found secret chambers in the Great Pyramid in the this would be in the early 1920s. They went down and found a chamber 1,000 feet under the Great Pyramid where there was a giant crystal 30 feet in every direction, ground convex, that made it a great radio device. So we talked to this theory with Hakim in the 90s and said that it's believed that there was a great crystal antenna that came out of the top of the Great Pyramid. Why it was not capped? And Hakim would say, no. And he would point to the Great Pyramid and say, that's the antenna. So the Great Pyramid, again, I say a myriad of functions. One of its functions is that it was a radio device that could communicate, yes, to extraterrestrials, yes, to interdimensionals, and receive from same.
What about the possibility of teleportation slash Stargate slash
There you go. There's your man for tomorrow night.
Yeah.
That's William Henry's.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's for sure. For sure. Again, the Serapeum, which you talk about, a lot of people believe that the boxes were used for teleportation. No mummies, bulls, not any of that. That's quite possible. Many different ideas. There's no doubt there are Stargates, as he'll talk with you tomorrow night. Again, Hakim would take us, as he was trained. Just briefly, I want to cover this. His story is so fascinating. As I say, he was academically trained, but as a young man, once he got trained by a Sufi master, and the greatest thing the Sufi master taught him was not to memorize Quran, which he did, but to meditate. His teacher's name was Ismail, had the title in Arabic Zen-nar, the fire of Zen. But Zen is not an Arabic word. It is a Sanskrit word, which means meditation. So it means consciousness, actually. Actually, Hakim derived it from the ancient Comitian word. When he and I were working on a third book, which we never finished and won't finish, it was to do a hieroglyphic dictionary according to Hakim. And he said he could do 22 signs. He started with one, which is called Zim. If people look up their hieroglyphic dictionaries, they will see what they call S is one hook. They say it means S. Well, he made two hooks. It's Zim. And it didn't have a meaning S, that's consonants, which is nonsense. That's the Greeks who made the language into an alphabet. It was not an alphabet. Each sign had a meaning, a profound meaning, and it had a different meaning in a different sentence, in a different paragraph, depending on what was around it. So it's a whole long understanding. To really understand the glyphs is a lifelong study, and it's not just A, B, C, D, E. Believe me.
Yeah, right.
So he would say Zim, consciousness. So the idea is that meditation leads to consciousness. So I used to use a title for him. He didn't like titles, but Zahi Hawass and his minions used to use this title when Hakim would come around with a tour group. Here comes Hakim, the father of meditation, because he's going to lead the groups. Oh, and they're going to meditate. And they were making like it's terrible, a terrible thing, like it was a put down. So I called him Abu Zen, which means the father of meditation, which he took as a compliment, which it was. So the idea is to understand that what you're talking about, what they call the Holy of Holies, at every site, every temple will take you to, again, you're going to come with us, you're going to experience this. Every site, every temple, every pyramid has a center focus of where the energy is focused. It's where the water comes underneath and focuses with the energy of the crystal in the stone. And so that's what we call the Holy of Holies, where in dynastic times, they would have a shrine. They would take one of the ancient pre-dynastic shrines that were carved in granite that had no inscriptions on it. They would mark crude inscriptions on it, and they would put a solid gold statue of the Neter, the god or goddess. Those are the sites. So Hakim went around Egypt at 6 to 8 years old as a young man, met all the wisdom keepers at every site who knew the secrets of every site, and they taught him. They showed him where the Holy of Holies were at every site. And that's the way we work in the field, and that's how he taught. So then you go, you meditate, you connect with the energy. So yes, each site has a central focus point where the energy is centered, and then you build your pyramid, your temple, your tomb, whatever around it.
Which is I like your passion there. Do you have a favorite site? I mean, I do. I haven't been there. I've only,
That's every site we go to. Everybody always asks the same question. I could say, yes, I have certain favorites, but I mean, the Giza Plateau, again, I have a connection to the Sphinx. From 8 years old, the Sphinx connected with me. I looked at a picture at 8 years old, and she made this unconscious connection with me. She has guided me all my life. She still talks to me in my dreams, wakes me up 3 o'clock in the morning to talk to me. This I say, and I don't care who believes it, who don't, because the idea is in 1992, next month, 25 years, the first day I'm in Egypt, I came with a group the first group that would doing spiritual tours to Egypt is a group called Power Places Tours, led by Dr. Toby and Teresa Weiss. They were the first group in the 80s to take people, mostly Americans, but Europeans came to Egypt and have spiritual tours. And their tour guide was Abdel Hakim. So the first day I'm in Egypt, I hooked in with a group with a lady who was leading a group with this in 1992. Her name was Nikki Scully. People can Google her name. She's written many books about Egypt. And it's an important name because she was married to a man named Rock Scully, who was the publicist of the Dead. If you want to hear this story in detail, Jimmy, back me up and say, tell me about the story of Hakim and the Grateful Dead. And we'll do that before the evening's over.
Yeah, we got to.
Now, I hooked up with Nikki Scully. She had a subgroup that was going to Egypt in 92. She realized I had a knowledge. I hooked up with her group. So the first day I'm in Egypt, we meet in front of the Sphinx, and I have a photograph of myself taken in 1992 in this exact spot. And there he is, because Nikki was using Hakim as a tour guide in the north, as John Anthony West was at this time, and others, and Barbara Hand-Clough, but she used a different guide in the south. So I had him the first time I was there as a tour guide in the north. The first thing he's doing, he's standing in front of the Sphinx. And I look at him, and you have to understand, if you meet Yusuf Awyan and most of the Awyans, they took after their mother, except for Brother Harun. Brother Harun took after his father. And they're small. They're small people. Hakim was tall for an Egyptian, about 6'1", and he stood up ramrod straight. As I know now, he was in his 60s when I first met him, stood up straight as an arrow, and immediately just talked about her and said calmly over his shoulder, she, behind me, is 54,000 years old. And immediately I looked at the Sphinx, and she said to me, here he is. This is the man you've been looking for all your life. This is your teacher. This is your master. He is my son. And that started it.
Wow.
From there.
Wow.
She's led me all the way to this journey, and still so The first day I always go to Egypt, I always go to the Awyan house, and I always say my obeisances, my salutations to her, always first. And if I don't, she gets a little angry at me.
Okay, I'm going to go down the list of my favorite sites by memory, but I just want a 1 or 2 word comment, or you can go further, but let's start with Karnak.
Yes, magnificent temple. It's actually Karnak and Luxor together. They're 2 temples that are actually connected by an avenue of sphinxes that at one time was 2 miles long. They've been excavating for years, and so they're 2 temples. They're the masculine and the feminine. Most people, most Egyptologists teach it wrong. They teach that Luxor temple, which is the huge columns, 65 huge columns made of sandstone, is to the masculine, is to Amun-Ra. No, it's to Mut, the feminine. The smaller temple, beautifully magnificent in its own right, Luxor temple, is to Amun. But yes, Luxor temple, Karnak temple, one of our favorites. A lot of things we show there, a lot of mysteries, a lot of things to uncover.
What about?
And there is one of my favorite places because there is a shrine to Sekhmet, who's one of my favorites.
Medinet Abu.
Been there. It's some tombs. There's some interesting tombs there.
It's pretty dang big, too. That's the thing. It's huge.
Well, all the tombs have never been all discovered. Even in the Valley of the Kings, all the tombs have never been discovered. One of the things Zahiwas was trying to do before he got out of there was try to find Ramses VIII, who he thought he knew where he was digging like crazy. But then he got deposed. But then he's now back in power. You know, it always comes up when I talk about him, the Who song, meet the new boss, same as the old boss.
Abu Simbel.
I've never been there because there's nothing there that's, again, megalithic, that's ancient Kemet. It's an important site, but I have never been there.
It's beautiful. I mean, I can only imagine what it must be like to walk up on top of that. And the same thing with Luxor. Luxor just freaks me out. Okay, really quick before the break, but that temple, when you go up the ramp, how does that feel?
It's Hatshepsut, and she actually is related to my second master's degree, which I did for the Women's Studies Department at San Jose State University, of all the women who took the so-called male role. Pharaoh, if they want to call it. She was one. It's a magnificent temple which was designed by her lover, who she never formally married and elevated to the male role. But he was an architect, he was a sacred geometrist, he was a master priest, and he designed that temple. So it's a beautiful temple. There's beautiful reliefs there that still have the original paint, being almost 3,500 years old.
The Temple of Seti I.
That's Abydos.
Yes.
We don't call it the Temple of Seti I. It's actually the Temple to Osiris. Again, this is a person who identified with it, who priests put cartouches there, and they think that he built it, did not build it. It's thousands of years older. That's where you have the famous Abydos Kings list. So we take you there. We have our master Egyptologist, who's Abdel Ibrahim, and Yusuf Awyan. They can read the Kings list for you and tell you all the different kings and the titles and all of that.
Well, I asked him about Abydos last night, and when I look at it, and this is what I brought up to him, and we can certainly address this after the break, and especially if we get into the subject of aliens too as well. When you look at Abydos, when you look at Karnak, when you look at Luxor, and you look at and Abydos, and you look at the enormity, the size, and we talk about all the time about the amount of work that it would take to build the Great Pyramid, right? Well, when we look at all of these sites, I see the same amount of effort and engineering and genius in all of these. And that's the one thing that is completely ignored in academia, is about how much effort and work would be involved in such a short period of time.
Well, they say they were built thousands of years, but you're still right. But also at Abydos is what's known as the Osirion. So let's talk about that after the break.
Yeah, we'll do that. Do you understand my point? You know,
yes.
You're
right, Jimmy. I can summarize it quickly. These dynastic sites were built upon ancient pre-dynastic sites. So there was an enormity that was already there before the dynastic people came in and built their temples. They always built on top of the older. That's why it's layers upon layers upon layers, as I was taught in archaeology.
Thousands and thousands of years. And that is my point. Thank you, Stephen. Man, okay. When we come back after the break, we'll get some debate in, everybody. All right. Enough of the bro love, Stephen. Let's have some fun after the break. Our guest tonight, Stephen Mehler. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on the smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store. So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on the smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
If your home has hard water, then it's likely that limescale is clogging your pipes, damaging your appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars each year. You can eliminate limescale in the entire house with HydroCare products available at Wave Home Solutions. Easy and efficient with no maintenance, no salts, no chemicals, and no coils. And you can buy with confidence from Wave Home Solutions. Performance guaranteed. Just go to bestwater411.com. That's bestwater411.com.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Stephen Mehler. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. We are continuing our amazing Egypt week, and our guest tonight is Stephen Mehler, and for Egypt 2.0 tonight. Now, okay, Stephen, ancient aliens and the great debate. The show Ancient Aliens and everybody that's on there are friends. It's all cool, and it is certainly, if nothing else, exposed the world out there to some out of the box thinking on all of this. But they have certainly focused on other megalithic sites, but certainly focused on Giza and the Great Pyramid.
we've been to a lot of. What the great thing about the Kemet School and Yusuf and I and Brian Foster is we've been able to go to a lot of these sites. We've been twice now to Pumapunku Tiwanaku with Brian Foster, and we also went to Baalbek. So we can speak. I have not been to Göbekli Tepe, so I will not give a final judgment until I do. But we can about these other sites as well as Egypt, and I know that you are good friends with a lot of people on the show. Of course, David Hatcher Childers is my publisher and is a personal friend.
Right.
But I have turned the show down 4 times. I turned it down the first season, the second season, season 5, and I turned it down this current season. Why? Because, yes, I agree with you. For those that are total novices who have no exposure to any of this material whatsoever, they get to at least see this, the visual that can open up their eyes and at least question, are we alone? Are we not alone?
Right.
But you see, my position on this, so if we're going to talk about it, is very complex. And very few people understand that I was a pioneer researcher in the field. Now, we talked about how these movies and books influence us. Well, as The Mummy and 10 Commandments, another film which came out around 1952 called The Day That the Earth Stood Still, the original, not the Keanu Reeves.
No, that was crap.
That influenced me incredible as an 8 and 9-year-old.
Rennie still freaks me out.
Another experience at 8-year-old, which I discuss in my first book. I grew up in the Bronx, New York. I used to like on a 6th floor apartment house. So in the summertime, I used to like to go up on the roof. Great song by I forgot. It'll come to me. Up on the roof. And around dusk.
The Drifters. The Drifters.
Thank you. Somebody was on it. At dusk, twilight in the summertime. One day, and again, these things happen in your life. I can talk to you like it's happened yesterday. I went up on the roof one evening, and I saw in the sky, I had what you would call now an encounter of the first kind. I saw lights in a particular formation, 1 lead light, 2 lights behind it, go across the sky. Now, I'm looking towards Manhattan, so I'm looking south from the Bronx. And it would be coming from the west, going to the east. And I just looked at these lights going across the sky, and then it made an immediate 90-degree turn and went back the other direction. And I said to my 8-year-old mind, that's not an ordinary airplane.
Right.
There's something going on there. So that influenced my life. So I've always been a UFO freak since the day that the Earth stood still, because I looked at that movie and I said, this is real. This is not a movie. They are like us. We look like them, and they can do this, and they've been here, and they've been here before.
Well, Michael Rennie was an alien. I'm just going to let you know now.
That was his great. And Patricia Neal was in that movie.
Yeah, Patricia Neal. She was actually so amazing in that movie.
And Billy Gray, who later starred in Fathers Know Best. He was the kid.
Yep.
He was his introduction in the film.
Yep.
So,
okay. So let's start
here. So I knew
then.
it was real. So I knew that I'd always been there. I watched all the sci-fi movies in the 50s. I got involved with support groups in the 70s and 80s. All of this. But, there were many things before. There are shows that go back to the late 70s, narrated by Leonard Nimoy, called In Search Of. That's when I first saw Baalbek. That's when I first saw Tiwanaku Pumapunku. And there were other shows called Sightings. I mean, this goes on in the 90s. There were many, many shows before them. So it's not original. But again, to people who've never seen it, what I usually say is, and we could talk about this. The first half hour of the show is usually great. You usually have great scientific information. You present things that people have never seen before. Second half of the show, Giorgio and David take over, and it's aliens this, aliens that, aliens this. So to make people understand where the situation, again, I was a believer, still am. I know we're not alone, and I know we've been visited. In fact, we will take you to a site, if you're coming with us next March, that Hakim called an ancient landing site. It's called Abu Jurab, and we'll explain it to you totally. So Hakim was a believer. All indigenous people say we're starseeds. I've attended starseed conferences with indigenous elders from all around the world who all say the same thing. This is a way station. We've all come from different planetary systems. So, yes, we're definitely believers.
But you're going to give me a but right here. So
Hakim
go ahead.
would say it's insult to our ancestors to say that we didn't have the capability.
Why? It's not. And I'll give you the easiest and bestest example. All of the cultures, and it doesn't matter if you want to go with Asia, you want to go with the Middle East, you want to go with American Indians here. It doesn't Mayans. It doesn't matter. All of their information came from the stars, came from the gods, and the gods came from there and spoke to them and guided them. And so what is wrong with taking that to the next natural step?
Because the natural step denies what I just said to you. The previous cycle we're in now, we're in the low end of the cycle. The previous cycle was the high end of the cycle, called what we call the 5 stages of the sun. Right. We divide the sun into 5 areas of the sky. The area where we were all in areas of enlightenment. We were using 360 senses. We didn't need any outside help. We did it ourselves. This is why he would get upset when people would say, aliens built this. He would say, no, what he's talking about happened millions of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Exactly.
And I'm going to further add more. I knew Zecharia Sitchin, okay? I actually had the whole day session with him. I was a fan of his in the 80s, but Hakim totally denied this whole story of Nibiru, and I can actually tell you where he said the word Nibiru comes from. But the idea is that there is no alternative scholar of Sumerian, an academic, of course, who agree with Sitchin's translations. When it came to Sitchin talking about Egypt, his translations of the glyphs were completely wrong. Mm-hmm. And so his idea of the Great Pyramid being a tomb for Marduk and this and that was all fantasy. Mm-hmm. So the reason we say is they themselves, through the oral tradition, did not say to us, aliens built the Great Pyramid. They said, yes, our ancestors came from Sirius. We came from many different directions in the sky. This planet is a way station. It's a laboratory. It's a university. But it is an insult to our direct ancestors to say that they did not have the capability to see these marvels that we will show you. And you will get the same response from everybody on the Kemet School team, even Brian Foster, because we all agree.
Yeah, but
as humans did these things.
I agree with you, but only to a point. What I am suggesting here is that the knowledge, the math, the geometry, the sacred geometry, astrology was all. Hold on, let me finish, Stephen. That's
okay,
all.
Go ahead.
Is that this? We are all taught. Everything is taught to us by somebody.
Absolutely
and if
true.
It came from the stars,
no disagreement whatsoever. The movie Contact, which was Carl Sagan, who smoked a lot of cannabis, was his last testament to the world, was Contact. When she comes there, she says, who built? Oh, we didn't build it, Ellie. It was here long before we came. Of course. But if you want to trace the origins of humanity, my brother, you're going back through ages of time which we cannot even calculate. We're talking about universes upon universes. Again, the biggest thing Hakim taught, which now Stephen Hawking agrees with, there is no time. There is no beginning. There is no end. We are just cycles upon cycles. So you want to go back to the origins of humanity? Who were the original teachers? Good luck, my brother. It goes back to millennia that we can't even calculate.
We can't. I mean, even, Earth is 4.5 billion years old. 3.5 billion of it have been sort of hospitable, right? The first billion years old. Yeah, the first billion years, this was a volcanic, nasty place. But in the last 3.5 billion years, there's no telling how many civilizations have come and gone, how many times we've been
absolutely correct, and that's what we teach. Absolutely correct. This is why he still comes down, and I do, being an Afrocentrist, that it all began in what we call Africa. It wasn't Africa, but there are people, there's the argument, no, it's Asia, it's Australia was before Africa, blah, blah, blah. He's talking about migrations that go back millions of years. Humans left Africa to go around the world, millions of years, not 50,000 years, not 100,000 years.
Impossible.
We've been traveling this planet for millions of years.
So you're saying I'm right?
Absolutely. It's what he taught. Ages upon ages, civilizations have risen and fallen. He would say what we're looking at now is like taking a torchlight and looking into the darkness. We're just seeing the remnants of this last cycle and the cycle before it. There are people who want to argue the Sphinx is 800,000 years old because of some geologists say that. They're absolutely wrong, but it's understanding that there is civilizations underneath the planet. Yes, underneath. That's the beauty of geology. It's the beauty of archaeology. It's always layer upon layer upon layer. And the ancient Cometians, and we see this with the Inca, we see this with all in Maya, all ancient people, great advanced civilizations built upon older advanced civilizations. That's why we see Giza goes back this cycle 65,000 years. Just this cycle.
Now, let's talk about Akhenaten, because if we're going to have the subject of alien talk, dude looked freakish. And he was the only one out of all of that artwork, out of all those sculptures, everything.
Yes.
They made him out to be non-human. I mean, he looked freakish.
There are actually Egyptologists that get their doctoral degree in what's called the Amarna art period.
Right.
Just the art of his time. Just the art of his time alone. Now, Brian Foster just wrote a book about Akhenaten.
But his wife, his wife, they didn't alter her. She was beautiful. And the rest of Armana, that whole artistic period from there, and I'm totally it was one of the best times of all of humanity when it comes to art. And that's what they based their stuff on. But him was incorrect. So was there some type of alien influence there, or did he come from the stars?
No, but I can tell you there's a book that's been written about it by a man named Daniel Blair Stewart, which said he was an alien from Sirius. So that's where a lot of this mythology actually comes back to the great science fiction author Philip K. Dick.
Right.
Who wrote a novel called Velos.
Yes.
He actually is channeling some ancient documents.
Yes. Brilliant stuff, by the way.
You know that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, this is a long story. In a half an hour, we're not going to cover it, 15 minutes. Brian Foster can talk about this for hours. The elongated skull people, I say, were human, not alien, but their DNA comes out to be another species of human. Again, we have to talk about this quickly. What has been discovered in physical anthropology in just the last 20 years, since I've been out of the field into academia, is 4 different new subspecies of human. So we don't know how many different types of human there were that led to us today, modern Homo sapiens sapiens, because we eliminated all the competition. But there actually were bigger brain people before us who disappeared about 500,000 years ago. So they may have been the ancestors of the elongated skull people. So just to get to your point, Akhenaten did not have that physiognomy at all. So the point is, because we do not have his mummy. They claim the mummy is in the Cairo Museum. It is not him. It is his half-brother. But we have his mother. We have his father. Normal skull, normal bodies. Tut has an elongated cerebellum, but he does not have an elongated skull. Not like the artwork at all. So it is the artwork. So people say, did Akhenaten direct his artisans to do this? No. They did this, and he agreed with it. What were they trying to say? Were they saying that there was a previous ancient race of very tall, elongated skull people, and Akhenaten allowed himself and his family to be identified with them? Yes, but there's no evidence of alien whatsoever. We have Tut's body. His DNA's been tested. It's been radically tested so that they now say he's basically European, that he wasn't African at all. And that's caused a lot of controversy. Because they were all raised. Again, Hakim said Kemet was not just Africa. It was Africa, Europe, and Asia. So it was all races of people, all types of people. So yes, we have alien genes, if you want to say that. It will eventually be found when they map the genome and they find that all these mutations that we have that are carried forth in genetic lineage lead to advances in our species. It could have been that they were doctored with. We have no problem with that. We have no problem with Sitchin saying that, and it's not the Anunnaki, but that ancient beings may have come in and tampered with our DNA to speed up our evolution. We have no problem with that too. And yes, there was always a teacher and there was always a master. All the things we have, again, we can sit here and talk about all the modern inventions that we have that supposedly came from the Roswell crash, like Velcro for one, like the computer chip for another. But again, it goes on and on and on. We agree with it. You see, my stance is complicated. Yes, I know that we're not alone, and I know that we have alien DNA. But again, when people want to know about these specific sites, and we talk about, going off on a tangent like, did the founding fathers have alien contact? I mean, everybody. Did Elvis have play alien tunes on his guitar? I mean, it gets absurd, ad absurdum. I mean, it gets to the ridiculous degree where people lose the fact that we as a species have done incredible things. And that's what the politics comes in, has led us not to believe that we are these incredible things. Politics, based on a Greek word, polistika, means city talk.
Well, I'm not suggesting Akhenaten used Velcro, right? I'm not going that far.
And I'm suggesting he was not an alien, but an extraordinary human being.
But he did have a fascination with astrology and the sun, and fired all of the priests and went off in another direction. And I see that. I feel a connection to the stars with him. As opposed to any other pharaoh or leader.
That's really discussed in detail in my second book, From Light into Darkness. At least 5 chapters that link him not only to Judaism, which was other authors, which was Freud's major argument in Moses and Monotheism, the book that turned
right,
but also to the Rosicrucian tradition, to the Western mystery schools that few people are aware of. Only the Rosicrucians know. The Rosicrucians have venerated Akhenaten as their traditional Grand Master.
Well, and then there's another aspect to this that I find fascinating too, that I haven't gotten clear answers on, which is the priesthood itself, to me, was based on money. All the priests were rich, right? And they had a way of making a good living for them and their families. And it was in their best interest to somehow get him out of the way, Akhenaten, and restart things. Was it because it was based on their livelihood, or is it because it was based on the fact that he was an alien and had
the fact that he was an enlightened being, and the fact was he saw a corrupt priesthood was exactly like you say, like religion is today, paying for indulgences, paying for the way to the afterlife, and paying for all of that. And this is why he put them all out of work. He wasn't bringing in a new religion, and he wasn't worshiping a god. He was bringing in the concept of light, of consciousness. There is only one Egyptologist, a German Egyptologist who I mentioned in my book, who had any clue to what Akhenaten was teaching. And again, it's in my book. He's considered by many, many different mystical traditions as have been an enlightened being, a grand master. And so it was from that understanding he threw out the corrupt priesthood. And of course, they plotted and probably killed him, Nefertiti, and their 6 daughters.
One of the things that I have, and I'm going to stay right on the subject, one of the things that I have issues with is the Dendera light bulb. And as fascinating as it is, and I would like it to be what the theorists propose. I really do. But if that is indeed the case, now we're talking about a high technology that had to have come from somewhere, and it wouldn't have been Stone Age man. And I do see the connection to an off-world knowledge being used in Egypt.
You think Nikola Tesla was an alien?
You're probably right.
No.
You're probably right.
Nikola Tesla was not an alien.
But we're not talking about Tesla. We're talking about Dendera.
Can connect to different dimensions of understanding.
Sure.
It's extraordinary beings come along who can connect to that ancient knowledge without actually having to have a physical source. Now, again, this is a complex subject, Jimmy. We can come back and talk a whole show about this, because we're not just talking about physical ETs. We're talking about interdimensional beings who do not have corporal consciousness, who do not have corporal beings, who've also been in contact with us, who also guide us and do not have physical form, who've not actually physically joined us on Earth, but can contact us through the Great Pyramid, through crystal, we can do a whole show about crystal skulls and how that comes up with alien or interdimensional consciousness.
When we look at, and this is why the Dendera light bulb idea, just the idea, the germ of the idea, I accept, because when I look at the tunnels and the carvings and the artwork, that's up to the Valley of the Kings. We didn't even address any of that. And
that's at the Temple of Hathor, Dendera. Which you mentioned. That's one of my favorite places, because the crypts where we can go down to, where you will come with me, you'll get 3 different versions. You'll get a different version from Yusuf, you'll get a different version from Muhammad Ibrahim, and you'll get a different version from me, which is Hakim's version of what those glyphs and what it really means. But it is talking, according to Hakim and what I believe, about a knowledge of very ancient technology. Yes. It's actually showing light bulbs with electricity that's not wireless, that's not Tesla technology. It actually shows those bulbs being connected to a source. We'll show you that in detail. We'll discuss it with you. But what I love about Dendera is it was a temple where secrets were kept. And secrets are revealed because we know where they are and we can show you. But only the very high priestesses, and priests only came in that temple once a year for a ceremony. It was only priestesses who occupied the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. That's why women love it. Why women love the Temple of Isis at Philae, because only women mainly were there. And the energy is so feminine, so beautiful, so strong. But it opens the feminine in every man. That's the reason for going there. So you connect with all of that great energy. But only the very high, would see these glyphs now that are open now to the public that we can talk about.
What's your theory in how they got the light down there for the artisans to do this work? That's where I have to back up and go, there's a mystery here.
Crystals.
How do you think they did it?
Crystals.
How so?
Crystals can be charged energetically so high that they emit light.
And
also, the standard explanation that Egyptologists would say is they polished metal mirrors, highly polished, and they would line them up from the outside, reflecting the sun, all the way down into the deep tunnels.
Yeah,
that's what they say. But you're right in that we see no soot, we see no evidence of torchlight in the very deep recesses where these inscriptions and carvings are.
Yeah, because the artwork is too fine. It's too beautiful. Yep. And you would have to have that lit up. And ask any artist what, you can't do it in the dark.
The esoteric version is that they could excite certain crystals to such a high excitable state that they emitted light.
Or
just like we do with a light bulb.
Maybe E.T. brought them flashlights.
Oh, well, see, you can always return there, but we don't. So you're going to say that all during the tour, and you're going to get it back from us. But no, it didn't have to be E.T., but we'll show you where E.T. was. We'll show you inscriptions, and we'll show you glyphs that people think are showing aliens. And we'll give you a different alternative that it's not alien.
When you look at the massive statues, and of which they're all over the place. And when you look at, the Colossae of Memnon, for example, and you look at that, which I don't know, what are those, 5, 6, 7 stories tall? They're huge. How did they transport that? I mean, it's one thing.
Simple explanation, as Abdel Hakim would say. The only way to deal with that weight is to deal with the gravity. Had to be creating anti-gravity fields. And through the use of sound. And we'll give you details showing of that in March with the devices are still in the Cairo Museum, how Hakim explained that they created anti-gravity fields through the use of sound. The same way Edward Leete Scanlon built Coral Castle.
Interesting. You want to hang on for a few minutes after this break?
Sure.
Yeah, let's. We can't stop here. I've got way too many questions. So let's take a break right here. We'll come back. I want to talk about this anti-gravity, number one. Okay. And number two, because you have been to Peru, you've been to Pumapunku, we possibly have the same type of technology that was moving those stones too as well. They're still huge, they're big, and they're complex. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Stephen Mehler. We'll be right back.
Listen to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter. Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out. That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-618-WAVE, 888-618-WAVE, or visit mydryhome.com. mydryhome.com.
Ride the wave. Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Tepe.
Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Great conversation tonight with Stephen Mehler. We should just have him on for like a month. Just a straight month of Mehler. What do you think about that, Stephen?
It would probably drive people crazy. I don't know.
All right. This anti-gravity thing, it's one thing about Egypt, and we're going to stay on Egypt. But when you look at Paracas and you look at some of these walls in Peru with, I mean, seriously gnarly stones, or Baalbek, in Lebanon, there's something involved here that we don't have any concept of. But I have to say, and it seemed like it was in use universally. Where did the technology go? How did the amnesia set in where it just disappeared?
Right. This is like the fall from grace. It's like the story in all great mythologies and all great literature. The consciousness just waned. I mean, it's natural. Again, there's nobody to blame. We could say that there was an event. And again, there are different explanations. What was the event? Dr. Robert Schoch is a champion that there was solar activity, major solar pulses. Our sun just totally freaked in a way and caused all of these major effects, which caused the worldwide cataclysm that we see. And we see evidence of the cataclysm. We'll show it to you all throughout Egypt. It's very clear at Pumapunku, Tiwanaku. There's almost 6 feet of silt. I mean, it was a massive tsunami. The evidence of, and again, this is Brian's brilliant book, Aftershock, which I highly recommend. So we know there was a cataclysm. So we can see the evidences of it. It's a different idea. I say it came from a supernova, which is known as the Vela supernova. People can Google it. VELA occurred between 14,000 and 11,000 years ago. In fact, I just recently saw an article on Facebook that astrophysicists are still measuring background radiation from this event that happened that far long ago. It impacted our entire solar system from the outside in. So what we see is massive evidence of this. So Baalbek is the capital of megalithomania. What was happening in Baalbek, of course, again, that was one of the earliest shows in search of that Leonard Nimoy did in 1979 that really opened me up to, wow, got to go all around the world to see these things. I mean, there's what's called the basis of what they call the Temple of Jupiter, which they think is a Roman temple, which is nonsense. The base of that temple is very, very ancient. Contains 3 stones, which are called a trilithon. 3 blocks of limestone that are estimated to weigh 1,100 tons apiece, fitted together in space-age precision. We see in the quarry at Baalbek, the unquarried stones that were already even completed, one is estimated to weigh 1,200 tons. They found another one underneath they estimate to weigh 1,500 tons of limestone. What we see in Egypt, the unfinished obelisk, is 110 feet long, estimated to weigh 1,200 tons of rose granite, one single piece. So yes, obviously you look at that, and Egyptologists will tend to just let you think that they did this with bashing with stones and with copper chisels, which cannot touch granite, and this and that, and this and that, and they'll just dismiss it. They had an ability to anneal copper, which we don't understand today, made it so hard it could cut through granite and cut through quartz and all this and all that. So then your other extreme is the ancient aliens. No, there's no technology we know of. Nobody could do that. It had to be giants. It had to be aliens with super... But you have to have a logical understanding. The whole theories and explanations of why aliens came down to build these sites and then take off and leave them is all patriarchal mythology, all dealing with wars, Sitchin's mythology, wars and competitions, all things that have nothing to do with what the ancient people were really all about. And so we don't accept this, the idea that aliens built these sites and left it for us to find. No, we know that, and it's understood through the oral tradition, that we had the capability once to be this way, to be as an alien, as we want to accept it. The fact is, we are the aliens. That's the point I say over and over. How can you say what's alien and what's human? I say human is a condition that exists in other galaxies, not just the Earth, of course. Comes from many different star systems. Again, Hakim taught us that what the people in Egypt were called was the Sesh, S-E-S-H, 42 major tribes. Those 42 major tribes were all races of people that have ever been on this planet. So yes, he was an Afrocentrist. He was saying even the white race, so-called Caucasians coming from the Caucasus Mountains of the steppes of Russia, all came from Africa. All beings, all people came from Africa. All aliens came to Africa hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago. We are star seeds. The indigenous people of Kemet taught that. They would teach perhaps of the 42 tribes, maybe we came from 42 different directions in the sky. This has been what I've known from being in this subject since the 50s. This is a way planet. It is a university, yes. But again, we are the aliens. This is why when they finally do the human genome and they find that we have so many different subspecies that we are, again, 4 that we've just discovered in the last 20 years, including one that is called Boskop Man. And Boskop Man had a cranial capacity that is equal to the Paracas skulls that Brian Foster has discovered and is studying and writing the definitive book about, that lived 2,000 years ago. We have a cranial capacity of approximately 1,600 cubic centimeters, maybe to 1,800. These people, the Paracas people, not the result of head binding, had a skull capacity from 22 to 24 to 2,600 cubic centimeters. Much more brain than we have. What happened to them? They were wiped out by a smaller brained, lesser people known as the Nazca people, who they think did the lions, and they're not alien lions. There are different animals that can be seen from blimps. They had the ability to see them from the sky. But they wiped out the Paracas people. And the Paracas people, in their archaeological record, have no weapons of war. Only hunters, fisher people, peaceful pastoral people who did wonderful ceramics, wonderful artwork, with this tremendous brain capacity, but they're wiped out. But there's more aggressive people that come in. This was a very popular theory in physical anthropology when I was doing graduate work in the 70s, that we are the way we are because we're the result of very killer, aggressive apes that evolved into human, who are very aggressive. And so we're taught to believe we've always had wars, we've always had violence, we've always been aggressive. We reject this blatantly. It's a matter of the cycle. this cycle.
I know. And when we look at the oldest stonework in Peru, and we look at the oldest stonework in Egypt and other sites around the world, the oldest is the bestest of the work. And in Egypt, those examples are so they're right in front of you, because it's also in the art. It is in the sculpture. It's in the painting. It's in the faces. And it's also in the megalithic work, too, as well. But the best is the oldest, and it just degenerated into nothing. How do you explain that?
Devolution. I mean, that's Devo.
Yeah, devolution,
we've
right.
devolved. We've lost the senses. Again, we only say we're using 5 senses. And Hakim would say, we don't have the language. We only use the language of the 5 senses. He'd always use the example. Somebody said, I saw a dream last night. No, you didn't. Your eyes were closed. You were sleeping. So, and the great expression in the 70s, it was African Americans. I hear you, man. It's not with your ears. It's understanding. Who really understood this was Robert A. Heinlein. Science fiction is always really science fantasy. It's always what we call science fiction is really going to become science reality one day.
Sure.
So what Robert Heinlein was talking about in Stranger in a Strange Land, when he said the ability to grok someone, G-R-O-K. People could even Google it, grok. It's using more senses than the 5 senses. It's what Hakim said. They will label themselves as we wake up. I once gave a lecture in Rosicrucian Auditorium in front of 400 people, where I said that we are people are going to wake up in the middle of the night and know something they did not know before. That's the awakening. And I saw a woman in the front row elbowing her friend, say, see, I told you. I mean, many people have predicted this. All the masses have predicted this. Jesus himself said, ye shall do greater things than I. He was talking about now. He knew what was to come. And it's all here for us. Hakim would say we're born with everything we need. These 360 senses. We're talking about the patriarchs of the Old Testament. The ancient Cometians did live hundreds of years because there was no virus, there was no bacteria, there was nothing that could knock off our immune systems. They were operating at the maximum in a culture that was bathed in infrasound. And the infrasound was keeping the immune systems at their highest. So that's the stories of Methuselah, of Enoch, living hundreds of years, and only deciding when you had enough of this physical envelope, you dropped it when you wanted to.
Well, today I would buy into that if they had cell phones or television or the internet, 3,000 years ago when they started to lose this, because that's why we've lost.
Those are all physical extensions of what we once had. Again,
right.
We could think in more than 4 dimensions, and we could communicate telepathically. So Hakim would tell us in one of these lectures that you could take the Osirion, which is in Abydos, to the Valley Temple, which is in front of the Sphinx, and go to Stonehenge, and if you break it, it makes a right triangle. Meaning he was saying Stonehenge is an ancient megalithic site, which many people believe that the Druids came later and built upon it, which is what the modern Stonehenge is. Saying that people in those sites could talk to each other 24/7 telepathically. And so we could communicate around the world. Yes, we could communicate to aliens, physical presences, and interdimensional presences. So we didn't need them to actually physically come and help us. They could talk to us and tell us, sure, but we had 360 senses. We could think in blueprints. That's why they're never going to find blueprints for the Great Pyramid. There are no blueprints for the Great Pyramid. Nothing was ever written down then. It was conceived of in the mind, and it was executed. Boom. Maybe 80 people, men and women, built the Great Pyramid.
80?
Using anti-gravity.
Now that's interesting.
I'm talking 6 to 7 million tons of stone.
Well, it had to have been done easily. I mean, you have to take the physical side out of it.
We're going to show you this, Jimmy.
Right.
We're going to show you in the museum itself how they could cut through granite like it was butter.
How do we?
Because they made a mistake. We're not perfect. We're still human. Even working with 360 senses, still could make a mistake. And they left their mistakes for us to find. That's the beauty of what we show.
How do we get it back? That's the thing. How do we get it back?
Goes around, comes around. This is the awakening. We're back into Khepr, the scarab beetle. We're at the dawn of consciousness. We're going back. Eventually, we'll be back. We could build pyramids again, and we could be there. The beginning is with this knowledge. As he would say, people say, well, how do we open these senses? The first thing is to know that you have them. First thing is what we're doing on this show, which you've done basically for years now, and that's to try to get people to wake up.
Right.
Just don't listen to the news. Don't listen to the media. Don't listen to teachers. Don't listen to government. Don't listen to politicians. Trust your inner voice. Learn it for yourself. Go out and find it. Open up. Awake, awake, awake. There is a great expression Hakim gave us in Arabic. Sma'u wa'u. Listen and awake.
Did he, I don't know if you'd share it with us, but did he share with you a secret about getting, what part of the body do we need to deal with? Was there something out there that he shared with you that would help us get this back?
What we do is, again, each site, each netter has a different frequency of sound, a different crystal, a different herb, a different understanding, a different healing. Because that's what goes in astrology. With astrology, they talk about the different crystals for each sign, and each sign reaches a different part of the body. Well, these are the netters. We have all these principles within us, so you can activate your own immune system. You can activate your consciousness. It starts with meditation. Very simple. Been taught, it was brought to the East by Swami Yogananda. Brought the whole idea of Eastern meditation. This is how I started in the 60s. Started out meditating. It's how Hakim started at 6 years old. His Sufi master. People ask me, he studied with a Sufi master. What did the Sufi master teach you? What great wisdom did he impart to him?
Well,
he taught him to meditate. He taught him to meditate.
What's wrong with that question? Because that's we all want to know, and
just know that it's within you. Know that you have everything within you, and so you can make that question to yourself and go into a meditative state. Again, when people meditate, and many people teach meditation, you don't quiet the internal mind. People say, you can't do that totally. But you find that the longer you meditate, the more experience you get at it. It's the spaces within thoughts where it's at. That's where you find God. That's where it's at. When the thoughts slow down and it's just empty space between the thoughts, that's where we're in perfect harmony. Unity conscious. Bhagwan Sri, not the Bhagwan, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi called it unity consciousness. When you get to that space, that's God, that's it, that's everything. That's where we are eternal. Again, Hakim said, he taught things that blow people's mind. We could leave you with that on the show tonight. At the end of my book, I couldn't say it in the beginning. He taught there is no death. There was no word for death in the ancient language. Let's say it again. They had no word for death in their language. They just said to west. Or westing. That's why when I talk about him, I say he was born January 26, 1926, but he wested August 23rd, 2008. He's still here. He taught there is no beginning, there is no end. And as I said, Stephen Hawking has now thrown out all the work he did in his life. A brief history of time. That was his doctoral thesis. He now agrees, as Hakim says, there is no death, there is no time. Time is just a function of distance. There is no past and there is no future. It's all in this moment. Every master that's ever walked this planet has taught the same thing. There is only the eternal now. So that's all that exists. No past, no future. Then, he said, there is no separation, which means that every cause is an effect, every effect is a cause, everything throughout every part of the universe says, every dimension relates to everything there is. Everything that happens affects everything there else that is. There is no separation. So therefore, then, he lays down the bomb, which I put at the end of my book, there is no God and there is no soul. And there you get the underpinnings of religion, and where I talked about before how they came along with this hustle. They sold the idea of death, that there is death, the physical body. That's how they created religion. That was the original hustle that became the theocracy that we talk. You're going to die, so you're going to need me to talk to the man upstairs because you can't do it anymore. You've lost the senses. I'm going to do it. You have to pay me. You have to give me. I'll take care of your tomb. I'll take care of your body. That's how mummification began, as a total distortion, that you're going to return to this body. Nobody has ever returned to those bodies. And even reincarnation is a hustle, that you could actually come back in a new body. It's all, you go back to the eternal. There's no beginning, there is no end, there is no soul. We are only one soul. And this is where Hakim's teachings became just like Buddhism, because that's what the Buddha taught, that we're all just reflections of the one. There is no I, there is no ego, it's all an illusion. And that's what we're going to learn again. That's where we're headed. We have to first wake up. We have to get through this morass, which is the daily living, which is this age of Amun, this age of darkness, which is trying to keep us in darkness through our patriarchal religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, through the governments, through the powers that be, the Bilderbergers, the New World Order, all that you want to do. It's the rich that have done this from time and millennia. The rich who ran ancient Egypt with the theocracy, the rich who run the religions today, create the wars so that there's perpetual war, so it constantly becomes capitalism, constantly becomes money, money, money. Whatever is profit is what continues, and war is the biggest game there is, so that's why there continues to be war. No matter who gets elected president, makes no difference. No matter who gets elected leaders, makes no difference, until each individual person that's listening to us tonight and around the world wakes up. Then we can become again the golden age of literature. We can build great pyramids. We can have worldwide grid of pyramids that provide free energy for whatever you could want. You could have your cell phones again, but again, Jimmy, we had the cell phones in our mind. This is what's wrong with these devices today. It's taking them away from ourselves. I saw the most incredible thing on a Facebook photo that was a great basketball game, a high school basketball game, 2 undefeated teams. It was supposed to be a tremendous game, and there was a flash on the audience, and every one of the kids on the audience was on their cell phone, not even watching the game. And this is what George Carlin said to us. We're missing the game. He used to, my greatest philosopher was George Carlin, who said that when we're born today, we get a free ticket to the freak show. If we're born in the U.S., we get to sit in the front row. But then he took it to a higher extreme and said, he is one of those that's the recorder. He learned early to divorce himself. Separate yourself from the game. Look outside yourself. That's the great lesson we can tell you, which Hakim taught, and which again I say, if you don't like the system, create your own. People have to learn to step outside their religion, step outside their politics, step outside their value systems, and see themselves for who they really are, that we're more alike than we're different. The differences are artificial constructs to keep us separate, to keep us at each other, perpetual war. Once people wake up and realize we ain't going to play no war no more. We're going to put down all the weapons and guns. They will have no power, and their power is controlled around the fear of death. Once people wake up, and either go through the martial arts, whatever system of belief they go through, and realize there is no death, there is no fear, then they can't control us. End of discussion.
Don't send change. It'll wake the baby Jesus. Yeah, we're going to, and thank you. A brilliant discussion tonight. I had so much fun. And I want to leave with this. If I could give you a blank check, Stephen Mehler, blank check, and you could go and do whatever you wanted to in Egypt, where would you go and what would you do?
There's many. It's a long list. The first thing is to get into the basement of the Cairo Museum, because that's where all the anomalies are kept, the things that they can't explain that could even lead to aliens, or it could lead to understanding the technology. That's one. Two is there are many places to excavate that I know that we could dig. It would have to be bribes to the Egyptian government. Of course, that involves millions of dollars. But anything, what's beautiful about Egypt, and Yusuf Awyan has said this quote, you call it corruption in Egypt, we call it the way of life. There's nothing that can't be bought. When you see something that says forbidden, it's just who do you bribe, who do you pay, who has the key? So yes, we could do a lot of excavations. We could find out the truth of where these sites come from. We know where to excavate. Hakim told us there were 9 large pyramids on the Giza Plateau. Not just 3, there are 9 today, but 6 small. I know where some of them are. It would take excavation. So yes, it would be a lot of archaeology. There would be a lot of video, movies would be involved. We would fund the Kemet School totally. We would help a lot of poor families in Egypt. We would help a lot of organizations that need to be funded. That's what would happen.
So you would go to the Giza Plateau. Well, I love the basement of the Cairo Museum. That's brilliant. But you would go to the Giza Plateau and look for those 6 pyramids. That's where you would start first?
Yes, I know. We are going to show you one. We're actually going to do a video of it. Hakim told us where the fourth one was. It's basically all quiet. Yusuf and I discovered it in 2012. We can take you there. Also, we know there's another one out in the desert, which may be just a pyramidion peering out of the sand. They're buried. And there's sand and sand. You're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of years of deposition of sand. The only thing we ever agreed with Zahi Hawass was they've only excavated maybe 18%, which is under the sand yet.
Thank you
But the important thing is we know where to dig.
Oh, wait. Before I let you go, when's your next tour?
It's March 6th through 19th. It's again, chematology.com. People can be there. It's a techno-spiritual 5. Will feature myself, Brian Foster, Susan Moore, geology. Brian does a great job of comparing Peru and Bolivia. And, of course, myself, Yusuf, and Patricia Awyan, who is a person that you need to interview eventually. She was the best student of myself and Hakim, eventually got to marry Yusuf, and as co-director of the Kemet School.
And all of the information for the tour is at chematology.com.
Absolutely.
All right.
And it's still there. We're filling fast, which is great because, people are worried about tourism in Egypt. And again, I will say to you, Jimmy, and you know it, and most people listening to this know it, it's safer anywhere in Egypt than it is in the United States. Egyptians don't have guns. They don't have the violence that we think of. We think, terrorist act. That doesn't happen. And I once told a group here in Colorado that it's safer in Egypt than it is to walk into a Planned Parenthood in Colorado.
Thank you so much, Stephen. On that note,
you're welcome, my brother.
Yeah, you are the absolute very best. Thank you so much. And everybody, just go to chematology.com, and the tour is in March. And all of the information is there. And with Yusuf and Patricia and Brian Forrester and, of course, Stephen, Susan, that is the best guides that anyone could have. And so thank you so much for everything that you do. And we'll get you on here again very soon. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Stephen.
Anytime.
You got it. Stephen Mehler, everybody. What a conversation tonight. And again, it's Chematology, chemitology.com. The links are over at Jimmy Church Radio. Just go and click and head over there. And everybody that is going to be leading the tour, their bios are there, and you can check it out. So, again, chematology.com. Yusuf, who we had on the show last night, him and his wife, Patricia, if you can imagine for a second, I can, walking behind Mehler, Yusuf, Forrester, Susan Moore, and Patricia, and have them guide you through and tell you what you are looking at and what is great about it and the history behind it. It doesn't get any better than that. It seriously doesn't. So chematology.com. I just have to thank Stephen for the fascinating conversation tonight. And a couple of things that I thought were interesting here in that little, it wasn't a debate, but that little discussion that we had in the last break, which is this. And I totally agree with Stephen. The age of the earth is at the point where when we look at, even if we go back, let's just carve out the last billion years, the universe knows, the galaxy knows, the Milky Way knows we are here. Earth is beautiful. It's blue. It glows in the dark. It's not some gaseous, unlivable giant. It's a beautiful thing. And it glows, and they know that we're here. And they've been visiting for the very longest of times. That's just it. That is where the debate stops. So are we of them? Of course. It's all universal. It really is. That DNA that exists here is the same with every species on this planet. We're just a little bit different. Just a couple of little things that make us different from not only chimpanzees, but from frogs. And that existence is universal. It is. And when I say universal, universe. And that's it. And that's where Stephen and I actually agreed. Brilliant conversation. Thank you so much, Stephen. And tomorrow night, the one and only William Henry is going to be here. And so this was the intention for the week, by the way, was to have Yusuf on last night to discuss Egyptology and a little of the French stuff, but a basic of history. That was last night. Tonight, to bring on Stephen to discuss the things that aren't discussed in Orthodox academia. That was tonight. Brilliant discussion that it was. And then tomorrow night, we're going to bring on William Henry. And we're going to discuss the outside the box stuff about Egypt, and it will be a complete week, I promise you. Tomorrow night, William Henry. I do have to thank once again Mr. Stephen Mehler, and I cannot wait to get him back on the show. We will do the alien debate. Crystal Skulls, too. We've got to do that with Stephen. He's the best. Faded Black's executive producer is Rita Kamarian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark T. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, Jonas. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Fatoa, Mark D. Kovar, Faded by Dale. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Faded Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication is KGRA, The Planets. Thank you, Stephen Mehler. The best. Tomorrow night, William Henry. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2016 by Faded Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. Did you guys learn something tonight? Did you get edumacated? I know you did. Till tomorrow, everybody be safe. Go Backley Tappy.